Welcome one and all. It's time. Clash of Kings 2025. The biggest Kings of War event ever. 200 players. Nottingham. It's big. So this is going to be a long one. Over 1,000 pictures in this file that we're going to have to go through in agonising detail. So this could take several hours. And obviously from the thumbnail you can see that I've gone with my Night Stalkers this year. So let's dive in and have a look, and I'll tell you precisely why I chose them. Feel free to comment along in the chat there, and I'll occasionally turn my head and see what's going on up there. If there's any tactical insights or any thoughts anyone has. So this is the army that I took to Clash of Kings this year. 2,300 points of Night Stalkers. Now, I have been playing Abyssal Dwarves mostly for the last, how long has it been, 3 years, I think? But I've not been playing that much Kings of War, because weirdly there aren't that many events in Nottingham, which is odd considering Mantic is based here, so they should definitely put on more events. But mostly Abyssal Dwarves, and the Abyssal Dwarf lists that I've been doing the best with have been the fast Abyssal Dwarf lists that have really good board control with gargoyles and half-breed champions and that kind of thing, running around, getting in the way of stuff, so the harder hitting units, the fast cavalry, can come in and murder things because everything else is blocked. That's been my style of play mostly for the last couple of years. This is drastically different, and I felt pretty confident that had I taken my fast, heavy control Abyssal Dwarf list to Clash of Kings, I could somewhat comfortably get probably 4 wins out of 6. I'd probably lose if I come up against any of the, like, the top 20 or so players that are just really, really good and play the game a lot, and I haven't played it that much lately. And you get a lot of international players coming over as well, and usually if someone's committed enough to travel to another country to play a game, they're usually really good at it. It's usually some of the best players in that country that come over for the big events. So I don't think I would have a chance of winning, and I've not played in enough events to finish high enough up in the table to really win a prize. So what would I really earn for finishing like 63rd place out of 200 for getting 4 wins? Not a lot, really. And even if I were to win Clash of Kings, I don't think I would actually have enough points to qualify for the Masters this year, because I've not played in enough events. So I decided, rather than taking an army that's safe and I'm more comfortable with, and I think I could probably get more wins than losses, I'm going to do something a bit wild and just pick all the coolest Night Stalker models that I have. And then everything else in the list is just going to be what I have to take in order to make it legal, and then see how many points are left and what else I can fit in. So there's very few artifacts in this list because I want to cram in as much cool stuff as possible. So the first thing I started with is obviously all 3 Shadow Hulks and the Portal of Despair. So we've got 4 Titans immediately. The first things added to the list, they have to be in there. The next thing, the Dread Fiend definitely has to be in as well, because that's one of my favourite conversions. And then we're looking at things that are maybe somewhat competitive, but I also think are very cool, like the Bloodworms, a legion of them. A lot of people take those for Night Stalkers. Then the Shadow Hounds are very good as well, but I also think they look cool. So we've got 2 competitive units there. Then, to bulk out the list and to make all this legal, we've got some Scarecrows, a regiment and a horde. We've got 2 hordes of butchers. And then to add a bit more variety in there, we've got Soul Flayers, because I think they look very cool as well, and some Needle Fangs because they're the cheapest unit left and there weren't a lot of points left at this stage. Now, for this to be a more competitive list, I think probably want less Shadow Hulks. You don't want to put all your eggs in the Shadow Hulk basket. If you come up against like ogres or anyone that's got lots of big stuff that their Slayer comes up against, then you'll be glad to have them. But I think 3 is probably too many. So probably something like more Shadow Hounds would be more of an optimal list. It's got a lot of nerve and a lot of unit strength in this army. It's way more than I usually have on both those counts. It's unit strength 31, which is like 30% more than the most I would ever have with my Abyssal Dwarves. So it's a lot of unit strength, so it is going to be a different playstyle. It's a list that, where normally I've been playing with lists that you throw them in, kill something, and if you don't kill it, it's really bad news because they can hit you back and then you'll die. But the idea is that you chaff up the other units so they can't hit you back, so your hard-hitting units just get to go through the enemy army one by one, picking things off and not getting hit back. This army is very different. This army can actually take a hit. We've got some big unwaverable titans with high nerve and good defense. We've got big hordes with high nerve, especially the bloodworms. You have to get up to 28 on the nerve to do anything to them. Butchers, decent nerve, and the ones that can be wavered, like the butchers and the bloodworms, have fury. So it's going to stick around a little bit if it gets hit, at least those units. Some of them are a bit more fragile, like the Soul Flayers, for example. Not as high nerve on those. The Shadow Hounds, not bad. They won't just explode the instant they get touched by anything, but they really need to be getting the hits in first, and they should do with their speed. But let's have a look at the models as well. So, Bloodworms. Lots of Bad Squiddo snails and slugs on there, and the Bad Squiddo Death Snail, accompanied by, oh, we've got Bad Squiddo, what's this set called? It's the rocks with the prisoners kind of chained up on it in skeleton form. Can't remember what the set's called, but it's a Bad Squiddo product. And then we've got some Heresy, what are they, Slug People, something like that. Then we've got some Scarecrows there, just your standard Scarecrows. Now the thing with my Night Stalkers, even though there's lots of conversions going on and lots of crazy wild stuff, the paint jobs are actually fairly quick. That was the goal with the army, because I wanted to have a lot of fun building, which is the thing I like most in creating an army, is just building things. And painting, while I don't dislike it, it is more of a chore. So with this army, the original goal was to have loads of fun with conversions and then just blast the painting out and get it on the table quicker. More Scarecrows there. These were originally painted as spectres, which is why they're kind of ethereal looking, kind of materializing into Scarecrows. But spectres disappeared, so now they're just regular Scarecrows. I see we've got John in the chat. Good evening. That appears to be the very John providing commentary at Clash of Kings this year. Community legend. We've got the Soul Flayers there. Butchers. These are the newer Butcher models that are a bit larger, and I've heavily bloodied these up. There's a lot of dry brushing going on in this army. Shadow Hounds. Most of the effort's gone into the conversions and the stuff that's going on the bases, like the little individual insects crawling around and the slime. Needlefangs. Then the Dreadfiend. So this is one of my favourite conversions. It's the Hellboy frog monster with a giant's head on it. Because you don't need arms when you've got a big scary face. John says 14 hours of talking. Yeah, that's like one of my live streams, I think. Shadow Hulk #1. This is the first model I actually made for the entire army. And this was a lot of fun. I had a Mantic Giant that I didn't really have a use for, so I just started adding things to it. So, Dragon Head, that obviously everyone gets in their Mantic goodie bag at some point. We've all had a couple of Dragon Heads. And just other bits and pieces. Green stuffed faces all over it. And very nice. This is the most recent Shadow Hulk I did. This one with the Mantic Kraken on it. And this, you can tell this is a more recent one because I've got much better at sculpting these eyeballs all over it now. Which is the same on the Portal of Despair. That's also one of the more recent builds. And I think it's a Bad Squiddo portal. And I think a Fenris Games... Is it Fenris? I think it is. A slime trumpeter of some description, or a flute player. Then this one is the GW Mega Gargant with Mantic Zombies and Mantic... One of the big Mantic gribbly creatures, the big mouth put into its belly there. And just a lot of fun. And it's a good talking point as well. If people are wandering around the halls, actually, look at that. That's a really good shot there. You can see the bag of eyeballs on this guy's belt there, which is supposed to be a bag of cannonballs. It's kind of a nautical giant. But I've put an eyeball on the end of his gun, and he's got a bag of eyeballs as ammo for the gun as well. So, obviously, it's eye-catching. Tee eyes. People walk by the table and it's going to grab them and they're going to start asking questions about the eyeballs and the tentacles and they're going to be drawn to it and it's going to be fun and hopefully it creates a more fun experience for everyone at the event and my opponents. I don't think necessarily that it's going to be winning any painting awards because if you look, the actual paintwork is very basic on a lot of them. It is just the build that's the exciting fun bit, and then the little extra mile that I've gone to are on just small pieces like the finger and toenails, which I think look pretty damn good actually, but most of the flesh of the creatures is just dry brushed. We've got Bart in the chat. Whenever I see the name Bart, I'm tempted to pronounce it like Sideshow Bob, like Bart. Says the stream worked out very well, John. Yes, I obviously didn't catch any of it live either because I was playing in the goddamn tournament. So, eyeballs, more eyeballs. Lots of stuff on the back of the miniatures, which opponents occasionally see, but you will see quite a lot of in this video, because that's where I'm taking the photos from. And this is most people's favourite little guy on the back of one of the shoulders, just chilling there, not even looking at the battle. And here is the list on paper. So, scarecrows and bloodworms, butchers, shadowhounds with the helm of the drunken ram on them. So the reason for that is that they're entirely geared towards making unhindered charges. Ferocious charge and thunderous charge are really what they've got going for them. Without that, they don't do a lot. You need to be getting charges in that are not on terrain, not into a wall of phalanx, not onto a wall, not into the woods. Nice, out in the open. That's their job, and that's why maybe people would hesitate to have a list full of them, because with one unit, you can pick that one spot on the battlefield that you can send that unit into that doesn't have a lot of terrain in it. If there's a lot of terrain on the table and you've taken multiple units that are worthless if they're charging into terrain, then you may run into trouble. So one, maybe it's the sweet spot. Don't think I would go more than two if it's a unit that really has to have an unhindered charge at all times to be any good. Because if it's hindered, it's going to hit on 5s, whereas if it's not hindered, it's going to be hitting on 3s. So, very important, and Helm of the Drunken Ram just doubles down on that by giving them more thunderous charge for a low cost. The Bloodworms have Hammer of Measured Force, which is a fairly standard upgrade that you'll see people take on them, especially if you're not taking any Bane Chant in the list, which I'm not. No Bane Chance at all. I don't have any individuals. I've just gone for the coolest looking stuff available. So Hammer of Measured Force means that on average, if they're not hindered, they're going to be doing 10 wounds to whatever they hit. Any unit in the game, 10 wounds, as long as it's not like ensnaring or something. So that should be quite scary for people to deal with the high nerve as well. And there aren't too many units that you're going to see that they don't have a chance of taking out in one hit. Even just doing 10... on average, any kind of ogre horde, anything that size, is in danger if they take 10 damage. Especially when I've got sources of dread in the list as well that can boost that up even more. And any time the bloodworms are charging in with something else, there's a very little that you would expect to survive that. The soul flayers, thing that kind of makes them interesting is that they are a slowish flyer at speed 8, and they also do not have nimble. So you have to set them up carefully, and they're not super fast like they used to be. So, Wind Blast is also the only shooting attacks I have in the entire army, and it doesn't even do damage, so no shooting damage whatsoever in the whole list. There was a point at which, when I was building the list, I did temporarily take out some things and try and fit in a Mind Screech with Lightning Bolt, and then a Mind Screech Apparition with healing, but I decided those models just weren't as cool as the alternatives, such as the Dreadfiend. So that's why he stays in. No tactical reason at all for the Dreadfiend, because I don't think he's that good. Then we've got the Needlefangs, slowish flyer again, height 1. Just a bit of chaff, 80 points. That's all they're going to do. Dive in the way of stuff, maybe grab objectives if there's nothing pressing for them to do. 3 Shadow Hulks, of course. Cool. Most things stealthy, of course. Not the Portal of Despair. For some reason, that's not stealthy. But it is the only source of inspiring in the whole list, and it gives something else inspiring as well. And it's one of the only healing abilities I have in the whole list as well. It's got Life Leech 3 on its own, which generally doesn't come up because you've only got 5 attacks, so you're probably not going to be hurting things with it. But it also has Radiance of Life. Dread is nice as well, and then a second source of Dread coming in from the Dread Fiend, who is vicious with 5 attacks and speed 8, so he's definitely not bad. I just think for 135 points, maybe you could get something that's more useful or more cohesive with the rest of the list. Okay, game 1, and it is hold the line scenario, and I'm up against goblins. 3 hordes of sharpsticks, and as soon as I saw that, I thought, I'm glad that I didn't bring my Abyssal Dwarf Cavalry list against this, because a wall of phalanx is not what they want to go into. 2 troll hordes, one that's going to explode after I hurt them, after I kill them, and they also have fire oil, which would come up against my Shadowhounds, that I think are the only regenerating unit I have. A mincer mob, so obviously they're going to have high defense from the front, but not particularly otherwise, and lots of attacks. 2 war trombones, and any kind of shooting I'm not too concerned about, because my whole army is pretty much stealthy. Unless it's really, really strong, maybe like elf elite shooting, maybe they could still get a lot of hits through. But most shooting, I'm kind of glad to see it in the enemy lists, because it's going to be suboptimal against my entire stealthy army. A slasher with war trumpet as well, so that's a big beast. 2 giants, so we're going to have 7 titans in this game, which could be a Clash of Kings record. If anyone knows of a game that had more than 7 titans in it from Clash of Kings this year, then let me know. Then a king with Jareth's Pendant and the Sacred Horn, so it's going to have the Headstrong aura that's going to be boosted, which is going to keep some of these units headstrong. And then a Flaggit with the Talk of Dissonance, and I can't actually remember what that does, but I don't think it's particularly useful in this game. Then a Stingit with Throwing Knives, just a little individual, with the Pipes of Terror. And I'm not sure, obviously you can charge into combat, but if it's slightly more of a shooting character, then maybe Pipes of Terror is an interesting choice. A Wiz with Banechant and Hex, which is obviously no use here, but Banechant definitely is. And another Wiz with the Boomstick, so some nice Lightning Bolt. Okay, let's have a look. And let's not have a look at all these human legs in the background. Let's have a look at the Titan Fest. So we've got a couple of giants. By the way, this Goblin army, I'll get some more pictures of it later when I go through most of the armies, which is going to be very long, and I might snip that out into its own separate video as well, because that's going to take quite a while to go through all the armies. I don't think I got quite all of them, but most of the 200 armies I did take pictures of. This army is actually set up to look like some kind of rock concert going on. The goblins are the audience, and the trolls are like the high-vis wearing bouncers, and then the characters are playing instruments, and the giants have instruments as well. You can see this one's got a guitar, this one's got a giant triangle, and the war trombones are like big speaker systems, and there's a big speaker on the slasher as well, so it's a very cool narrative themed army there. And when it's all laid out properly, i.e. not on the battlefield, you'll be able to see it later from the other pictures. But here we go. So hold the line. The central area here at the end of the game is going to be worth 3 points. The 2 outer sections are going to be worth 2 points. So my usual thing is don't contest the whole table if you don't need to. So I'm going to focus most of my attention on these 2 sections here, and on this side I've only got a Scarecrow Horde, which is going to prevent the enemy from just leaving a chaff unit there and holding it. And I've also got units close enough to the line that if I do need to take that one later, then they can be diverted if this side's going well. But you don't want to just have a totally abandoned flank. It would be less of an issue in this game, actually, because my opponent does not have a lot of speed, so normally, if you leave a flank abandoned and start pushing up, you'll see fast units coming down here and then getting round the side, and then you're surrounded and you're getting hit from all sides, and it's not fun. So you definitely want to have something that's preventing the enemy from pushing into the abandoned flank, generally. Not necessarily a big points investment that you would put there, though, because it's very likely to get killed against more enemy units, but a Scarecrow horde is not that easy to crack, so I don't know whether a horde of Sharp Sticks would like their chances of just wiping out that unit quickly. But I'm not going to be in any rush to get into combat, because I'm mostly focused over here and I'm using them as a delaying unit. In the middle, we've got two of the Shadow Hulks, we've got the Butchers, we've got the Dreadfiend, we've got the Bloodworms, so all the hard-hitting stuff here, except for the dogs over there, and one Shadow Hulk on the hill, and the Soul Flayers also on the hill. So you can see you've got the Needle Fangs over here as well. There's a lot of terrain, actually, a lot of walls, a lot of forests, a lot of difficult terrain, so I'm glad I didn't bring more of the dogs. It would be quite difficult to find unobscured charges with them. So I've also lined up, you can see, certain units to not touch the woods, and the Shadow Hulks have Strider, so they don't care. They're going to be charging through this stuff unhindered. But the Bloodworms and the Butchers, we don't want them being too slowed down on their way to the enemy, so I've lined them up so they're not going to be walking straight into the woods at the start of the game. They actually want to do a little bit of at the double movement first of all. And my opponent has a Slasher and some Trolls out on my right flank, a War Trombone and one of the Giants, some of the Goblin Sharp Sticks, some more of them. I think that is one of the characters there on a flea bag. There is another infantry character there, another Giant with the big dangly triangle, and the Mincers, more Trolls, Trombone, more Sharp Sticks. I think this is the shooty infantry character who has the scout ability, and then some wizards hanging out at the back. So, turn 1 to the enemy, and it is a push forward, and because the scoring areas are in the middle of the table, not necessarily the worst idea to go first on this one. It depends on the speed of the enemy and how the deployment looks, and whether you want the enemy to move forward because you'd like the look of the terrain for a fight on one side or the other. But in general, if you want to get into the middle, not necessarily bad to go first. And pretty much just an advance, because the shooting isn't really going to be in range yet. There is a bit of lightning bolt, but that's not going to worry the Night Stalkers, and that is the entire first turn. So not much speed on the Goblin side. I do have more speed. My Shadow Hulks have less speed than a Giant, though. That could be significant. My speed is mostly in the Needle Fangs, who are speed 7, the Soul Flayers, and the Dogs. Turn 1 for me. And the Scarecrow horde isn't that eager to get killed, so they haven't gone forward at full speed. They want to draw the enemy down here. I don't want them to kill the Scarecrows and then just abandon this flank and leave something cheap behind to hold the area. I want them to think that this is a threat as long as possible. Everything else moves up. I don't want to go forward too far and leave any flanks open, but the enemy don't really have the speed to capitalise on flanks at this stage. I would also ideally like the enemy to be very eager and charge me over this wall or charge me into the terrain with units. Giants obviously don't care about that with Strider, but keeping a pretty solid front line, except for these Scarecrows that have just charged off in front on their own because they're just Scarecrows, so I don't care about them. So if the enemy decide to charge them, that's fine by me. I've put my Dogs and my Soul Flayers and my Shadow Hulk with an eye on getting this little bundle taken out, the Trolls and the Slasher. I think these 3 units would definitely do a good job on those 2, which would then leave me the chance to flank if I can get it done quick enough. So I've set up into my charge range with the Dogs and probably the Soul Flayers as well. Turn 2 for the enemy. And a War Trombone has moved up as well to join in. And it's not quite full speed ahead. Obviously, you've got to be careful of charge ranges and make sure that you're not in range to get multi-charged by too much stuff. But the Sharp Stick hordes aren't too concerned about being multi-charged, it seems. And the standoff continues. Nothing significant happens yet. Into my turn 2. Scarecrows, again, not that excited. And in the middle, so let me go back a second. You can see that one of the units has moved up here. And I've made sure that it's out of sight of any units that could be flanking it. And then this unit that couldn't get out of sight has just put the Needle Fangs right in front of it in case someone decides to charge They would have to hit the Needle Fangs instead. The Dread Fiend charges into the Triangle Giant because I do not have the speed advantage with my Giant, so I want to pin that one down and then move the others up into position so that I can get the first charge in if we're going to have a Titan off. And the Dread Fiend does 2 damage. And I've pushed them both up together. This one is facing forwards, this one here on the left is facing that way. So they're protecting each other's facings. And this one is looking at the enemy giant there. This one has got an eye on going for anything over on this side. I've put my Scarecrow Regiment and one of the Shadow Hulks into the Sharp Sticks there. 10 damage, that's a good start. And you'll notice that the Soul Flayers have leapt into action as well. So let me go back and show you where they are going. So, Soul Flayers here found out that the flank on this horde of Sharp Sticks there was available. So the Soul Flayers went into that flank. And these 2 Shadow Hulks went into the front. And then after combat they rearranged, so this one's facing that way, that one that way. And you can see the Soul Flayers did end up being hindered by the terrain, but it was so many attacks going into that horde, and they did not stand up to it. So when you're advancing a long solid line, let's go back and have a look again. You want to make sure that each unit is protecting each other's flank, unless it's a trap and you want the enemy to charge the flank of one of your units because it's expendable and it puts them in a position that you want them to be in later. So in this situation here, whenever you're moving up all your units together, just have a look if enemy units have access to your flank. Are they in charge range? Are they in the flank? And if so, look at little rotations just to make sure that the corners are covering each other so there's nowhere for the enemy unit to sit. Because this unit could have definitely been a little bit further back, just half an inch or so, and then nothing would be able to get into their flank probably there. Okay, and so that horde is almost down as well. The Shadowhounds go into the Trolls, only do 7 damage, which is a little bit disappointing. And that it was actually a difficult decision that I had to pull the Soul Flayers away from this flank, but as you can see, I've chosen to redirect the Bloodworms in that direction instead, as a bit of a trade. And the Shadow Hulk as well, because the Shadow Hulk, the Soul Flayers and the Dogs were going to go for this flank, but as soon as there was a flank charge available on the enemy horde, and the Soul Flayers were going into it, I wanted to get this unit pinned down as well, start the fight here. And the Bloodworms were going to be lagging behind, and I was starting the fight early with units that weren't in range of the Bloodworms yet, so I've decided to focus them on going this way now, because I think with their unit strength of 5, they will be more than a match for anything on that side, whatever's left after the Dogs have dealt with it. Turn 3 for the enemy. So, this little goblin hero charges into the flank of the Needle Fangs, which is not very friendly. And the Trolls go back into my Dogs, and the Slasher with the Trombone and the regular Trombone move out to take aim at the Bloodworms. Over here you can see the enemy Trolls and the Mincers are getting ready to get into the action as well. And I do have some charges available though based on that, because you can see I've got this Shadow Hulk facing that way. So potentially I could be in range of one of those. And let's see what damage they can do. So you can see there's a point of damage put onto my Butchers with a bit of spell casting from within these woods here. Then the Bloodworms take 3 damage from the Trombone attacks. Not going to be very effective though because of the stealthy. The Dread Fiend gets wavered, which is okay because he's holding up that giant for a turn now. And 6 damage done to the Scarecrow Regiment by Sharp Sticks, so they're fine for now. And the Needle Fangs do get killed in close combat by this guy, who then goes backwards so that he can't be charged. My opponent probably assuming that I won't bother charging across this wall into combat because I would be hindered, and it wouldn't be a very good attack against a regenerating unit. So let's see if that's what I do. And I think those Trolls, by the way, if we go back over to this side, I think I may have wavered them. Yeah, you can see it there. So they weren't able to hit the Dogs back. And they weren't able to get in a position that allowed the Slasher to get in either, because of the positioning. So, into my turn 3, a lovely upside down picture of the standoff, stare down between the scarecrows and the sharp sticks. I'm still not too eager to get that fight going. And the butchers. So, one unit of butchers, let me go back. This one here charges into the mincers. This unit does charge over the wall because I want to pin these trolls down and stop them hitting anything else. And I do actually get rid of the mincers in one go, which is great. And you can see the Dread Fiend, with it being nimble, it was able to turn around and get out the way of this giant, so I was able to put my Shadow Hulk in there and do 8 wounds, or get it up to 8. The other Shadow Hulk into the flank of this sharp stick horde, and combined with all these units, that was able to finish that. And you can see that whatever this giant does now, whether it charges into a Shadow Hulk, Scarecrows, or the other Shadow Hulk, it's going to have issues. Because I'm sure it's not going to take out one of my Shadow Hulks in one go. Giants, with their number of attacks, aren't the best at killing each other in one go. So if it goes in there, I will be able to see it with this one. If it goes in here, I'll be able to see it with this one. The dogs finish off the trolls and the bloodworms push up. And I think they actually charge into the war trombone because it had to move up to get this war trumpet into range on the slasher. So I was able to charge it with the bloodworms and kill it. And because it's a war machine, I was throwing 120 attacks at it, which is an obscene number of attacks for any unit to be making. So this is going well, obviously, and I don't see much of a way back for the goblins now. I think the sharp stick hordes weren't able to do enough on their own, and the trolls and the mincers could have done with probably being behind the sharp sticks, I think, in case... Obviously I could have chaffed up the sharp sticks rather than killing them and blocked in those units, so it's easier said than done to get your powerful fighter units into combat. But I think they needed something in front of them to stop me getting the first hit on them. Turn 4 for the enemy. The Shadowhounds, you can see when they overran to try and get out of arc of this thing, they only overran about an inch, which is why the slasher is able to get into their flank now. We've got a giant into the scarecrows. So I believe the thinking is that is a unit that can be killed in one go. And this Shadow Hulk is going to be pinned down by this character, assuming it does a wound. Carrying on with the Titan Fest there. Trolls versus Butchers. And it's just occurred to me, actually, I think these trolls are actually on the wrong size base. I think their base is too large. I think this is the base that you would see on monstrous infantry rather than large infantry. Not that it's any particular advantage to have trolls on a large base, because it just means more enemy units will be able to charge into you, but I think it is slightly too large. I think they're supposed to be the same size as the Butchers. So this stare down continues. You can see the Scarecrows are taking 1 damage from the War Trombone now. The Shadowhounds do get killed, but we're about to have Bloodworm versus Slasher battle, and even if neither unit gets killed by the end, I'm quite happy with that because the Bloodworms, with their life leech, they'll get their wounds back, they should survive, and then they've got superior unit strength to hold on to this table section. The Scarecrows do drop to the Giant, but the Giant is obviously about to get sandwiched, or at least hit by one of them. And you can see the Shadow Hulk has put the dragon's head into the triangle there. The ultimate insult, some might say. And the enemy giant gets wavered from that, or it was wavered, but obviously it had fury. The trolls waver my butchers, who also have fury. And onto my turn 4. The scarecrows decide this is the time we're actually going to attack now. We're going to charge into the goblins. And so one of the reasons it was a standoff as well is because the goblins are movement 5. The scarecrows are movement 4 with wild charge D3. So I was staying out of their charge range, but within my maximum charge range. And then I would roll for the wild charge, and if it was +3, I would then decide whether I want to charge at that stage. I've got the option to, whereas the goblins would have to move forward And if they move forward to within their charge range, then that means I can charge them. So I think they were a bit hesitant to do that. And the enemies are dropping now like flies. You can see the butchers, double butcher attacks to take out the trolls. The soul flayers may have taken out a hero there. The Shadow Hulk took down the giant. The other Shadow Hulks into... Oh no, this Shadow Hulk actually fought the character there. Yeah, I may have taken damage and therefore couldn't charge through it, possibly. And then over here I threw in the Portal of Despair into the combat as well, but not enough to kill that giant yet. Bloodworms into the Slasher. And obviously it's all going very smoothly. There's no real way the goblins can get anything out of this game. It's just a question of how much stuff I can kill now. So turn 5 for the goblins. The Bloodworms take some more damage from the Slasher, but on average they should be killing it next turn anyway. The Portal of Despair takes some damage from the giant. Scarecrows take some damage there, but not a big deal. Turn 5 for me. We get troll units into the flank of those sharp sticks, killing them off. And everything else is dying apart from characters that are able to hide around me. And the enemy giant is now killed. The Slasher is killed. So there's this guy left and this guy. A couple of little heroes dancing around, but all in all, not much is going to happen now. A bit more shooting from the War Trombone, doesn't kill anybody. And then I'm going to be able to charge that in the last turn. So that's gone. One of the heroes is gone. So I think there's just one goblin left now at the end of the game. And I'm holding all the table sections. So let's have a look at the last wide shot. Pretty convincing win for the Night Stalkers. I think the enemy units probably would have been scarier to me had they been able to support each other. I think the battle was quite spread out, and I felt like I had the superiority in everything apart from down here, where the Scarecrows weren't really interested in fighting anyway. I think this side I had more resources, so I was always going to get that. And over here I had a couple of units that were able to pin enemies at key moments. The Dreadfiend was able to do that. And I found a flank available as well, which got rid of an enemy unit much faster than I would have done otherwise. Apart from that, I think it's a tricky matchup for the goblins actually, because I've got more speed. Even though I'm not a speed army, I have more. And my giants, my titans, are slightly better than the enemy ones at killing each other. Because the enemy giants, only one of them has Slayer, the other one has Rampage, and my titans, my Shadow Hulks, all have Slayer, which is obviously better against giants. And Shadow Hulks just hit a bit better than giants. Hitting on 3s is quite a big deal. And it's even better, I think, because Strider means that they're never really going to be hitting on 4s unless you intentionally go into an ensnaring unit. And even if you do, hitting on 4s isn't the worst thing, whereas a giant going into an ensnaring unit and hitting on 5s is pretty terrible. So Shadow Hulks, the good hit roll, I think makes them a decent option. Maybe not in 3s, I think that's a bit excessive. It's just the number of attacks that lets them down. So usually big infantry hordes are what are going to cause them problems, because you're only going to get how many wounds through on average with a Shadow Hulk on a big infantry horde. So you're going to average something like, you're probably going to get, like, let's be generous and say you'll get 10 attacks. And then you're going to hit with 6 or 7 of them. You'll probably fail one of the wound rolls. So you're only going to be doing like 5 or 6 wounds per turn with a Shadow Hulk. So they're not the biggest threat to infantry, so they need to be supported. In this instance, they had the support of a flank charge from the Soul Flayers, and then 2 of them into the front, which ended up being enough to kill the horde. But in general, massive blobs of infantry are going to be an issue probably for these guys, because there's just not enough potential damage outputs coming from them. They've got high quality damage, so it's good against anything with a good defense, or something that relies on its defense rather than high nerve is in trouble against Shadow Hulks. Okay, so a nice maximum points win, and I took some pictures of the trophies and stuff. So this is the Clash of Kings shield, where the previous winners get their name added to it each year. There we go. You can see Halflings and Dwarves are the 2 previous factions that came out on top since this shield was introduced. and the largest wooden spoon for the largest Kings of War event ever. And I had to capture it in 2 images because it's so vast, this mega spoon. And Bob, who does all these spoons, really pushing the boat out with a spoon for this one. Look at that. Massive. Then we've got a Kings of War helmet. This is the shield that the champion gets to keep, rather than the one that just gets the names added to it. It's various lovely trophies. Various impressive bits of paintwork there. Some medals, Judges' Choice Awards for armies. The Countercharger Award, which is for the player that finishes dead average at the event, so right in the middle of the pack, whoever gets the most average score at the event. So technically the most difficult award to win, because you don't have a lot of control over that. Then we've got Best Army trophies, 1st, 2nd and 3rd place. And a very impressive extra large giant. And then I took pictures of the armies, so yes, this could take a very long time, but I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on each one individually. So, we've got some very stylish mushroom goblins. Very nice. And obviously, if people want to have a closer look at these armies, they can either pause the video, or they can go and scour Kings of War fanatics on Facebook to see if there's pictures of individual armies posted on there, or ask people. Find out whose armies they are, and request more pictures. Very stylish there, though. Then we've got some halflings. You'll notice here there's vouchers sitting next to all the armies. Those were, if you bring a Mantic army, you get £10 off in the little Mantic shop that they had set up at the venue for the day. Lovely halflings, very green bases, nice grass there. Empire of Dust, very cool. Lots of skeletons. More halflings. Some of the armies only have like a close-up shot of a couple of models because they weren't necessarily put out for display, they were just like left on their box lid or something. This is a ridiculously tasty army, and there's a lot of converting and kind of scratch building and top level painting going on here. This is the one army that definitely caught my eye the most. Look at this, some classic dragons as well. Very classical looking. It's a shame this picture's blurry because that's a very nice model as well. People will have seen this army probably if you're a Kings of War fanatic. Very cool. Then we've got a sideways shot or a vertical shot, if you will, to capture the majesty of this display board, which I'm going to assume it has to be an actual goddamn tree, doesn't it? How can that not be a real tree? Look at it. If that's not a real tree, I'm not going to eat my hat, because, I mean, it could be a fake tree, but it just looks very real. And the army on it's not bad either, look at that. Very snazzy. Then we've got some delightful watery trident realms with their big tentacly faces. We've got some salamanders. I thought this flame effect is pretty cool there. Giving Jurassic Park 3 vibes there. Film where they decided that the dinosaurs were allowed to have a few feathers. We've got, I assume these are some Basileans there. Very nice and bright and vibrant. We've got some orcs. Are these orcs or rift-forged orcs? I think they're rift-forged, actually, yeah, with flying cavalry. Definitely. We have got... I'm not going to pretend to know what every army is. This looks a bit herd-like, though, or forces of nature, maybe. We've got some abyssals. We've got some Northern Alliance. These bases are very interesting. Nice to see you. Then we have got... that. Is that Abyssal Dwarves? You know what? I'm not even sure. It could be Abyssal Dwarves. It could be Twigletkin. I'm not 100% sure just from looking at that. Someone will know. We've got some elves. We have got... Now, smoke machines. How do we feel about smoke machines on display boards? What do we think? I think I've got a video of this coming up. You won't be able to hear any of the background noise because I think I've got that muted, but you might hear it, potentially. So, I have no idea if it's going to be loud. Let's find out. There we go, I'll mute it anyway. But look at that. Smoke effects. I should probably do more actual video footage put into these videos, I think. I think that would be cool. Then we've got some more delightful forces of nature with a lot of elementals. We've got some more salamanders. I like the salamander piratey guys. What are they? Are they corsairs? Is that what they're called? I always think they look funny. We've got some nice muddy ogres. Very muddy. That's very nice basing there. Looks very authentically muddy. More halflings. Halflings quite popular at the moment. We have got some... I don't know what these are. I have absolutely no idea what this army is. Oh, actually, can we see there? Is that the army list? Let's have a look. Is this undead? I think it is, you know, because they seem to have skeleton faces. So I think this is a very cool undead army. That looks like orcs to me. Trident Realms. Elves. We've got... That's probably... Is that Forces of Nature? Ogres. Look at that. Riding on a frog. I'm going to guess that is... That's got to be Cuslow, hasn't it? Surely. That's still an option in the ogre list, I assume. Then we have got some Basileans, I guess that is. Yeah, it looks like it. And back to the display boards. And these are actually goblins? Are they actually goblins? They're goblin models. But what are these representing? Are those going to be giants? Yeah, it must be goblins. And those will be mincers, I assume. Very cool, though. And then we've got a ship with some twiglets on it. Look at that. Very kindly, the player has actually written the name of the faction, but I think I would have been able to work this one out anyway. But this is the new Warpath flyer, I think. It is for Warpath, isn't it, that flyer? And we've got this. Is this the Gordrake? Is that what it's called? It might be the first time I've seen one used at an event. But lots of delightful twiglets there, and I assume the units just are removed from the ship on the table. Very cool. Some nice icy Northern Alliance. We have got some more halflings. And Night Stalkers. Yeah, look at all the pumpkins on this one. It's like a pumpkin patch. And the creatures are growing out of the ground. And they pop up with no head. But they, as they're burrowing up through the soil, they put their head into a pumpkin. And that now becomes their head. I think that's what's going on there. Abyssal Dwarves. We like to see that as well. Like to see a bit of Abyssal Dwarf action. And I'm going to guess that's a horde of decimators there, which is a really cool idea for the unit basing, with the little war machine behind the fence there. Maybe 2 hordes. That's cool. Very nice. Some more ogres. Very colourful ogres here. Is that the most colourful ogre army I've ever seen? when I finish going through all the armies, if I get round to it afterwards, I'll put in a little chapter note or something so people can skip through this if they don't want to see it. Because this is going to take a while still. Salamanders, dwarves. Dwarves are pretty hot right now with all their strong infantry. More Night Stalkers with a Void Lurker, which I couldn't fit into my list, sadly, because there was no way I could physically get that many Titans in with the point limit. We have got some free dwarves. Again, very nice that it's actually there so I can read it. Some very cool old school slayers here. Very nice. We have got some abyssals. Some herd by the looks of it there. These look like orcs to me. And this is quite a challenge actually, figuring out what every army is supposed to be. This one looks like... Is this a cheeky bit of Varangur here? That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, I think I've definitely seen this army before, with the nice LEDs going on in there, which the pictures just about capture. By the way, whoever's watching this live, feel free to drop some comments in there. I see you lurking. Trident Realms. That is a lot of orcs and trolls. Oh, I've just spotted there. Look at that. Looks like... Is that the actual... I think this one is the Warhammer Quest Snotling, isn't it? In this Orkling unit. And that's the slightly later Snotling that came with one of the plastic boxes. I think that is the Warhammer Quest one there. I'm sure I've got some of those around the place somewhere. We've got some Ratkin. We've got some more halflings. Now this looks like a very fast, but also delightfully colourful halfling army. Very speedy, lots of balloons, lots of jetpacks. We have got some more dwarves. We have got some presumably abyssal dwarves here. Yeah, that looks like some decimators and some slave orcs, no doubt. Very cool. We've got some abyssals. I really like this model here. Then we have got some Night Stalkers. More representation for them. Nice Shadow Hulk. This is the proper Shadow Hulk, not my hideously created abominations. This is the standard Shadow Hulk. Now, Trident Realms. This is very nice. I really like the sharks. I really like the frog. Look at those. Especially this guy. Very cool, very horrifying. And look at that. This frog did give me some flashbacks though. For anyone that's played V Rising, the PC game where you're a vampire, there's a really horrible boss battle against a giant frog. So anytime I see a giant frog now, that's what it reminds me of. Just the trauma of trying to win that fight against a frog that jumps on you all the time. Colin is definitely late for the stream, but I think if you're visiting someone in hospital, I think you're allowed to miss the first game of a live stream. I'm going to allow that. And even though this has been going... How long have we been going now? It's not even far off an hour, this video. And we've only done one game because we're going through all these armies, and I did have quite a long speech at the start about my army selection, so it's going to go by a lot quicker from this point. We've got some nice Rift-Forged Orcs. We have got some Salamanders. Again, nice frog action going on here. Halflings. Ogres. The standard of armies is very high, and it's also more colourful than usual. But There are some armies that were ridiculously well painted from previous years that I didn't see at this one. So I think some of the usual suspects for having like the top tier armies weren't there this year. But they've been replaced with some others that are also very nice. Lovely Kraken. More Rift-Forged Orcs, they seem to be quite popular. We've had a few of those. Empire of Dust. I especially like these big models here. They're very nice. More Empire of Dust. I like the robes. Very nice colour fades going on there. Very cool indeed. More Ogres. More Abyssals. And these heads are very nice. This is quite unique. Look at this. Water effects with horses. Very cool. Is this an entire turtle army? I'm going to guess it's going to be salamanders then. Yeah, I can see it up there. It says salamanders. But look at that. I don't know if these are conversions or whether they're an actual miniatures line or whether they're 3D prints or what. But very cool. More halflings. And another video. Because this is a Ratkin army that is very three-dimensional in its display board. You have to wrap all the way around to see everything. Look at this. I've always liked the idea of making a dead zone table that's kind of like this, that like spirals round, but not very practical to play on necessarily. We've got some more salamanders. Seen quite a few of these actually. Yet more halflings. Some more elves. Okay, this is the goblin army that I played against in the first game, set up in its full rock concert mode, so you can see all the crowd there not being allowed to rush the stage because there's trolls in the way. And the characters are on top of the stage with their little instruments, and the giants as well, and the speaker system. I think that's one of the coolest setups of an army, one of the coolest diorama armies that you wouldn't necessarily know from looking at it when it's playing a game. And then when you actually set it up like this, very cool concept and very well executed. Look at that. Colin says, have you heard 4th edition rumours? Yes. I've heard a lot of the stuff that might be coming in 4th edition. The world seems to be not losing its mind as much as they usually do when changes are announced. But from what I understand, it sounds like they're kind of streamlining the game a bit in some ways and taking rid of getting rid of some unnecessary rules, is what I heard. Those were the whispers going around. Some rules that maybe don't add as much to the game as they add in complexity. I don't mean like dumbing down of the rules. I mean certain parts of the rules that are bloated, streamlining those, and then you've freed up some space in the rules to add other things then, I think is what they're doing. Hopefully that makes sense to people. But I didn't hear the late night Ronnie address to discuss it all in great detail. So there may be people who are there that have more information. But those are the whispers I've heard going around. It's not hugely sweeping changes, but also some significant ones. Dwarves. Now, this is nice. I can see they've got the little containers at the back of the base there where you can put the wounds that the units have built up. That's a good idea, building it into the actual base so it's not taking up space on the table. Very nice. We've got some elves. Some abyssal dwarves. I thought these looked very cool, even though they weren't really out on display as such. They're just kind of sitting on the tray a bit cramped. But look at the highlights. Look at the bold colours. Look at this guy. Maybe some of the best highlighting I've seen on some abyssal dwarves, especially on this and on the golems. Colin says characters are moving to larger bases, squares, like champions. Well, anything moving onto larger bases is not really much of a problem in wargaming in general, because you can just plop your smaller base into a bigger base. It's where bases shrink, that's where it's a problem. So larger base, not too much of a problem for me. If it was the bigger units, it may ruin some people's diorama bases, but I think it is just characters that are changing, so I think it's fine. Look at that. So I've got lots of pictures of this army because I just really like this highlighting that's going on. Now, I didn't get pictures of every army because some of them weren't really out for photography. Some of them were in their boxes. Very nice water effects on this, forces of nature. Some nice rats. And finally, that's all the armies I've got pictures of. So on to the next round. Let me have a look here and see what the scenario is. It is Fool's Gold, and I'm up against the Empire of Dust. So let's have a look at the list here. Skeleton Warriors, troop of skeletons. Very cheap. We've got 2 hordes of Revenants, who are pretty decent at fighting, not terrible, and a bit better than skeletons. 2 hordes of enslaved guardians, so they're going to be a bit more scary in a fight with their crushing strength 2. Nerve of dash 17, 18 attacks, so your standard large infantry. Scavenger Swarm, a flying chaff unit, very similar to gargoyles. Let's see, what do they have over gargoyles? I think they have slightly higher nerve. They cost a few more points. They are not shambling, so they can actually go very fast. Yeah, what do gargoyles have over these guys other than being slightly cheaper? These scavengers look good, actually. Maybe the fact that they're swarms, does that change much? I don't know. Soul Snare. Spellcaster with Drain Life 9. Okay, this is where we're going to run into some problems. 2 Undead Worms. Flying Speed 10 Titans, which are quite scary. Monolith, which can, of course, surge units from halfway across the table. Then Revenant Champion with Surge 5 on a horse. So we're seeing a lot of Surge, we're seeing some Drain Life. On the next one, we've got some Cursed High Priests as well with Drain Life 6. So we've got lots of Drain Life going on here. That could be a problem. Because one thing that immediately occurred to me when I saw all that Drain Life and Surge, I may struggle if we get into a kind of protracted grind battle. Because I think all of our units would struggle to kill each other in one hit. They're quite survivable units in the bulk of the army. The enemy units, though, are going to be healing again, whereas my units are not. So, if I'm going to take them out, I need to try and do it as decisively as possible. Because Drain Life has the annoying habit of, if you've gone in and wounded the enemy, spellcasters who are nearby will then cast Drain Life on you, take the wounds off you, and heal up the damage that you've just done in one go. Personally, I think Drain Life is a bit too powerful in the game. I think it should be a choice of having to heal or damage and not just be able to do both. But I don't think it's powerful. I think you can take a lot of it in the list, might be the issue. But I think it is very good. So, that could be a problem, so I'm going to have to try and strike decisive blows into enemy units I want to kill rather than get into long drawn out battles. But that's easier said than done, because look at this big solid wall walking towards me. I may not be able to get the multi-charges that I want. The scenario being Fool's Gold, that means that we have put down some tokens on the opposing player's half of the table with a secret value on them. So some of them will be worth nothing, some will be worth 1, some will be worth 2 at the end of the game. And I have put my zeros out on the right flank, and I've put the expensive one here. And then in kind of a bluff maneuver, I've actually put quite a few powerful units on the side facing off against the zeros, to make my opponent think that maybe these two are worth something. But they're actually not. But if you look at the units I've chosen to go over there, the Dreadfiend and the Soul Flayers are both very fast. They can easily be switched over to where the tokens are later. 1 Shadow Hulk and Butchers. And I don't know whether these two are going to be worth anything yet on my side, but this one's definitely worth something, so the Shadow Hulk can definitely go in that direction. So it's not actually a lot I'm sacrificing, so you want to look for clues as to where your opponent might have put the tokens, so don't just look at how many units they've put next to them, look at which units they are. If they're very fast, or if they're very cheap, then maybe there's not anything worthwhile in those tokens after all, or maybe it's a double bluff. So we shall see. Very compact forces I'm going up against here. So I've put my 2 Shadow Hulks in the middle there with the Butchers and the Bloodworms. So we've got a nice hard-hitting bundle here with the dogs behind them. I don't want anyone to get surged into the dogs. I don't want the dogs to get charged by very fast flying worms either. I don't really want any of my units to get charged by them ideally. So bit of eyeball action there. And the opposing army, these kind of burrowing creatures are the undead flying worms, who are really burrowing rather than flying in this case. And very nice paintwork on these. You can see the skeletons are out on the left. And cinematic shots over the eyeball shots there. Turn 1 for the enemy. So I think I may have allowed my opponent to go first here, because I want to be a little bit patient, because I don't know where the valuable objectives are on my side yet, so I want to maybe go last in the game, is my thinking, because we're only going to find out halfway through where the value is, and if we're fighting in the middle, we might suddenly learn that there's objectives that are worth something that are nowhere near where most of the fighting is taking place. But I want more time to be able to react to that. And if you're not going last, you can't necessarily just walk onto an objective, because the enemy could just charge you and kill you, and then they've got the last laugh, as it were. So that's my thinking, that I kind of want to go last. My opponent just set up a little defensive position with some revenants and one of the undead worms on this hill, which is going to make me a bit hesitant to throw Soul Flayers and a Dreadfiend forward, because they would certainly be killed by this thing, I think. Turn 1 for me. So I push up and stay out of charge range, because what I want to do, I want to push these units up, which means I can't use them to cover the advance of the Soul Flayers and the Dreadfiend, which is something I could have looked at doing, but I want to push them up this way. I don't want to be caught on this side forever, because I know that the 2 objectives I've put on this side are totally worthless. So I want to push everyone up, so I can't afford to put the Dreadfiend and the Soul Flayer in a position where they get charged and I'm not covering them, because I think they may very well die from that flying worm. So I'm going to try and push everything forward together. I put the Needle Fangs forward because they're terrible and it's basically a trap. And everyone else is just walking forwards, making sure to stay out of range of things that could charge me unpunished. So obviously it doesn't matter if one flyer charges into one of your units, but it would be foolish to, for instance, advance Butchers up and get them flank charged by something when they could just die immediately. And now in this case, if they were to go up and let's say this flying worm could see them, that wouldn't be bad, because even if the Butchers got killed, I could then charge and kill a big threatening enemy unit. It just wouldn't do that. But it wouldn't just be that. It would be that that thing would hit a flank, and something else would then fly over and block off the Bloodworms for a turn, so I wouldn't be able to launch a counterattack. So you've got to be careful and go up in a nice solid line, make sure you're not leaving any flanks exposed, especially to flyers. Turn 2 for the enemy. So the Guardians move up, and they're going to be surged into the flank of the Needle Fangs. This flying unit here have charged into the Butchers to lock down both of my units, which has allowed a triple charge here with a character, the Revenants, and the other Guardians into one Shadow Hulk, which I'm not too disappointed about, because it's going to get everyone into the fight. And we can start looking for maybe some flanks to open up for something. Obviously the enemy are eager to make the fight take place here, because that means the tokens on that side aren't going to be contested, and we're going to be fighting over the ones on this side. So even if the fight ultimately goes my way, that still leaves only half the tokens for me to grab. So that's why you would possibly want to launch into a full-on assault into the enemy on this mission, because the objectives at the back are just going to be yours to hold with no enemy units contesting them. Skeletons moving up. So the Shadow Hulk takes some drain life damage, I think, and then just takes 1,000,000 wounds in combat and dies. And the enemy units then back up a little bit. So, potentially, we might have a flank charge on here. I didn't check it yet, though. And not much going on there. Not much going on here. So, into my turn. And we do have a look to see. We get the laser out to see whether my Shadow Hulk could see this unit right here. Because if I could, obviously, that flank charge would be very nice. That would potentially wipe out a powerful unit. Now, the issue with getting stuck into the fight, and when you start breaking through the lines, as soon as you start looking for those flanks, because most of these enemy units can be surged, you can then get flanked yourself. As soon as you break rank, as soon as you stop just the solid line and launch something out to attack something else, you're opening yourself up to be flanked. In this instance, I think it would be worth it to get in there, though. And then I could lock down potentially this unit of Revenants with my Scarecrows, which would limit their ability to hit me back significantly, because they'd be kind of stuck in that position. So I think in this case I would go for it, but after getting the laser out, it was like a millimeter off, I think, from being able to see that unit. So, not going to be done. Obviously, the scavengers are killed by the bloodworms, Shadow Hulk into Revenants, and the Scarecrows just move up into this position here, which is going to protect the Shadow Hulk's flank from being hit by anything. Because obviously we've got this flyer to worry about. And I'm trying to keep my flanks as safe as possible, but obviously this guy is a problem. He's going to be able to get through and hit the Hulk. And I can't remember what that thing is. What's it called? I think I missed it when I was going through the list. Into the enemy turn, and we've got some counter-charging going on. We've got the skeletons going into the Scarecrows to lock them down a bit. We've got the Flying Worm going into my regiment of Scarecrows, which were just hanging out on the left flank on their own, minding their own business, which I don't mind because it's going to keep this thing busy now for a bit. And as soon as these flyers land, I've talked about this in videos before, they're most dangerous when they're not doing anything, because people are scared of where they can land, so there's a huge area of the table that your opponent is going to think twice about how they angle their units, and they're not going to be implementing their game plan the way they want, because they're going to be reacting to what your flyer could do. As soon as it lands, that's no longer a threat. So I'm not sad about it charging into these Scarecrows. It'll kill them eventually, but probably not in one round. So I'm glad it's out of the equation for now. But maybe the objectives that my opponent has put back here are actually worth something, and that's why he wants to get rid of my units that are on this side now. You can see this guy gets into the flank of the Shadow Hulk there. And we've got the Guardians into the Butchers. This flyer has got down off the hill and is now hanging out down here, so it can threaten more of the table, presumably. And these Guardians, I think... Okay, I think they were surged into the flank of the Butchers, because you can see they're at a slight angle. So, this was completely avoidable from my point of view, because if we go back... Where were we? Here we are. So, I think when I killed these scavengers here with the Butchers and the Bloodworms, I moved the Butchers sideways. I think the Bloodworms could have just been moved sideways as well. And that would have completely blocked off any kind of flank attack. So instead I moved the Bloodworms backwards, I think, for some reason. but because of that, they are now able to get into the flank with a bit of surge. And you can see the slight angle they're at means that they can just touch the corner and then line up on the surge there. And the Shadow Hulk is dead. The Butchers are dead. And the Scarecrows are not dead. And the small unit Scarecrows are not dead. But I think it's definitely not game over, because we don't know what the objectives are worth yet. But it feels like it's a decisive blow. The combat has gone very badly in the middle. I've lost a lot and not inflicted much in return. You'll notice the enemies are barely scratched, and that's because the damage I have done to them, there's been 2 drain life little wizards down there. And there's been 3 drain life sources that have been draining the life of my units and then healing back up the enemy. So I don't think this is going to go well now. I don't really have the units left to strike the kind of blow that I need to. I can definitely kill these 2, these Guardian units, but the Revenants I'm not sold on. Human hand entering the game there. Turn 3 for me. Shadow Hulk, Butchers into the Revenants on the hill. Do 11 damage. They've charged out of the terrain, so we'll see how that goes. Obviously, we've got this guy to worry about. The Soul Flayers are coming back in this direction now, and we've got the Bloodworms into those Guardians. The Doggos went into the other Guardians, I think, that were here, killed them, and now they have gone backwards to stay safe-ish. And the Portal of Despair is just locking down this enemy unit here, this little monster. The Scarecrows wanted to kill the enemy character and then overrun into the skeletons, but they only did 4 wounds, so not enough. And the Scarecrows did 2 damage to the Undead Worm. So, it's looking a little bit better with that unit gone, a little bit more solid, and we'll see how this situation goes. I'm waiting to see what this flyer is going to do, because it is nimble, of course, and there is surge. It could join in the fight down here, or it could look to get a flank in on the Shadow Hulk, which is what I'm thinking will end up happening. So let's flip the tokens over. So we've got 0 on the right. We've got 0 on the right. We've got a 2 right in front of the Bloodworms, which is okay. We've got a 1 here. We've got a 1, I think, under there. And I've got 2 in front of the terrain. So mostly the 0s were on the right, which is okay. So this is not necessarily how I saw this going. I didn't think it would be able to reach a rear charge, but apparently it was able to. I thought it'd just be able to get in the flank, but it is actually able to get surged into the rear of the Shadow Hulk now with its 2 pivots. So let's see where it was. So there we go. So 1, or it moves here, does a pivot, moves there, does another pivot, and now it's found itself in the rear arc, which is very unfortunate. Obviously planned by my opponent. Here we've got lots of horrible things happening to this Scarecrow horde, and the Guardians into the Bloodworms on the counter. You can see the Shadowhounds take some damage from one of the characters' drain life there. And they die. 7 damage onto the Shadowhounds and they die. Now my opponent took about 10 minutes, I think, positioning these characters, because we were talking through what would happen if I charged them. Because he was trying to avoid me being able to charge one of them and going into the flank of the Guardians. However, with this position, the Shadowhounds would go straight forward, hit that guy, he would align and I would slide, so I would not overrun. However, my opponent was thinking about putting this guy here. They are not mighty, and to my reckoning, that would mean that I'd be able to charge this guy, but end up in this kind of position. Because I would be able to charge through this guy, and that's the only way I could make contact in a position where I can land my charge. So they would go through, and they would do some kind of pivoting, and end up touching him beyond this guy, and then potentially get in a position to overrun. So, and then there was issues with this guy maybe being an overrun target for them overrunning into this thing, depending where you position over here. So it was very complicated, and he took a good long while working out the optimal space for those two. But in the end, it was completely irrelevant because they just double drain lifed the dogs and killed them in one go. Portal of Despair takes some more damage, and with the dogs going down, I think that's my only chance that I had now. So definitely going to lose the game, but we can still try and get some kill points and some scenario points to try and get some more tournament points. Winning the first game big is always a risk that you'll run into some of the big hitters, and even if you lose your second game, the residual points that you had from the first game is still going to put you quite high up in the table. So winning the first game big can actually lead you into like 2 or 3 really tough matchups after that, which is what you want. If you're going to be winning, you want to be facing the best players and taking them out. Scarecrow's dead. Small Scarecrow unit still alive, so they've done their job holding this guy up for a long time. So I was kind of right to be pleased that he charged in there, because he's done a really poor job killing them. Bloodworms, obviously still intact. And the Shadow Hulk that got recharged by this one is dead. So the Butchers are going to have to kill those Revenants now. The Bloodworms are going to have to kill this unit of Guardians, even though they're perfectly healthy, like everything is, because of the drain life that's just healing them back up again. Turn 4 for me. The Butchers do some decent damage, but do not roll high enough on the nerve. I think I rolled like a 3 there, so did not kill them. And Scarecrows, again, not doing too much. Portal of Despair, not doing too much there, but it's holding this guy up again. Bloodworms, hilariously, only do 6 damage. So I think for the games so far, they are actually averaging about 7 damage per attack, where they should be averaging 10, really. The Dreadfiend just moves into his position to go after one of the tokens, but for some reason, I didn't think that this unit was going to be in range to charge them. I didn't even bother measuring it because it just looks too far to me. I guess they're only speed 5 and it just looks further than that to my eye. And there's also all kinds of units blocking the path. So I didn't even consider that really as a threat. So I could have easily just put it here and been out of the range for definite. But just eyeballing it rather than measuring, it just looked further than 10. So just assumed he was safe there. But you'll find out that actually, no, he's not. He was just within 10, hilariously. Bloodworms, again, stuck in this combat that could go on for a while until help arrives, and the Butchers are now obviously going to die because they're double charged. And yeah, the enemy are just making sure they're on all the objectives now, and making sure to murder everybody. Dreadfiend gets wavered. Bloodworms are on quite a lot of damage now. Everyone else is dying, of course. Turn 5 for me. Bloodworms hit back again, do 7 damage, and then roll a double 1. The Soul Flayers into the flank of the Revenants do not enough at all, and now they will die as a result of that foolishness. Turn 6 for the enemy, double charge to try and finish off the Bloodworms. This monster into the flank of the Soul Flayers. Dreadfiend has his life drained repeatedly, and lots of damage. Bloodworm's dead. Dreadfiend dead. So that'll be the end of that. And what did we learn here? We learned that drain life is good. We learned to measure things properly. And what else? Up against a lot of surge, maybe I should have just kept my army in one compact bundle and not worried about the objectives at all, and just tried to stay alive as long as possible. Because as soon as you break rank against all that surge and flying units that can surge in particular, you're leaving yourself open to flank attacks, especially against a good player. The issue with staying compact, though, is that if I'm not looking for flanks, there's no way I win the fight anyway, because my units aren't healing, and the enemy units are healing at the same time as my units being damaged. So these casters are a nightmare. Yeah, so I think if I was optimizing my list based on what's happened so far, I would add in a lot more healing abilities. I think that goes without saying. So, check this out. The Kings of War plushie Mind Screech, which I now have one of in my possession, which I'm reliably informed is going to be available at some point soon from Mantic. Bum bum bum. People were able to get these in their, I think it was just in the XL goodie bag. So, if you thought Games Workshop were cornering the market on wargaming plushies, think again, because Mantic are coming for you. Which other Mantic miniatures would you like to see in plushie form? Who do we think would make a good one? Glancing over into my cabinet to see if there's any I think would make a good plushie. We've already got one for the Night Stalker, so probably not them. What do we think? Maybe like an Elemental or a Golem or something. Something that's big and thick, obviously, like that. I was just looking at my Abyssal Dwarves, like an Obsidian Golem, something like that I think would be a nice plushie. Colin wants one. Well, they will be available at some point. You will be able to buy them. Into the next game against the Herd, and this mission is Plunder. So the Herd list, we have a Spirit Walker Infantry Horde with the Brew of Haste, which makes them quite fast. It's just a very fast list. It definitely has the speed advantage over me. Centaurs with Chalice of Wrath, which is going to give them Fury at speed 8. Cavalry Horde, 2 Cavalry Hordes. Then 4 chaff troops of Gur Panthers. So these are pretty much non-flying gargoyles. This is the kind of shenanigans that I'm doing with my Abyssal Dwarves when I run 4 gargoyle troops and just sit them in front of the enemy so they can never get the charges they want, and I can just pick off whichever units I didn't block. We've got a Minotaur Chariot regiment, 2 Flying Beasts of Nature with 7 attacks, a Great Chieftain who flies around, and a Druid with Banechant and Bark Skin, and then Moonfang Hero Large Infantry with a lot of special rules, is a bit of a werewolf type character. Okay, so Plunder. 5 objectives on the centre line. These are ones that you can pick up, so they're loot tokens, and you take it in turns, picking one that's going to be worth 2. So the orange counters are going to be worth 2. My opponent chose the middle one. I chose this one over here because it's behind a wall or behind a castle. So I'm more likely to be able to pick that one up. And you can see I've gone for my usual, the classic me strategy of not worry too much about the objectives that aren't important. I'm putting all my energy on these 3 here. Only fast units on this side, so they can swiftly come over this way if needed. Otherwise, they're just going to deter the enemy from trying to flank me. And I think, other than the enemy being really fast and having chaff, I think the units match up okay for me. The main issue is going to be whether I get chaffed to death. So let's see if I can avoid getting too many of my units blocked by 1 unit of wild Gur Panthers. So all the Shadow Hulks together, which is more of an intimidation tactic than anything truly strategic. They're also better at killing things, obviously. When they have more attacks, you want more of them. But for pure strategy, you probably don't want them all next to each other, because there's less chance of getting a flank then if they're all just charging into the same facing. So it is purely intimidation, having them all just alongside each other like that. As close as they can be, because their tentacles are too pokey. So again, it's the models that are dictating my tactics rather than what I should be doing, which is letting the tactics dictate. So, very nice Herd here. That is the Chariot unit there, that big tentacly horrible thing. Beasts of Nature, obviously the big boids. And turn 1 for me, so I move up but stay mostly out of charge range except with units I don't care about, like the Scarecrows. And on this side, the Dreadfiend is on an expedition to go and find himself a flank, because these units here are quite scary, and if they're going to advance on me, I want to be able to threaten the flanks. The enemy definitely has the speed edge. Turn 1 for the enemy. Now, this is going to be the site of my mistake in the next turn. We've got Beast of Nature behind the hill. We've got these Gur Panthers on the hill. Now, I'm actually going to go scroll back a second and look at the army list. I just need to check one thing momentarily. There we go. Okay. So, where were we? Into the enemy turn. So, advancing up, not too eager to jump onto the objectives yet, or onto the loot tokens. Doesn't want to get charged by me, which is understandable when my opponent has the speed advantage, and the Dreadfiend is doing his job because the enemy up there are now turning to look at him. So a little cheap Dreadfiend is now causing the enemy to have second thoughts. Turn 2 for me. So the Needlefangs charge into the Gur Panthers on the hill. The Dreadfiend gets out of the charge arc of the Spirit Walkers, I think they are. And everything else just advances up, protecting their flanks from any flying threats. The Bloodworms have got this unit of Scarecrows in front of them to make sure they're not going to get heavily multi-charged. Now, that is the next picture that comes, and I didn't think this was going to happen. So, I asked a question about whether the Beast of Nature was touching the hill or not. Unnecessarily, because the Beast of Nature is taller than the hill, so that was irrelevant. But I didn't think that my Soul Flayers were visible to the Beast of Nature. I was thinking that the Beast would not be able to see over this into my Soul Flayers. Because, let's see, the hill is height 3, and it's got these guys on it. The Gur Panthers, who I think are height 2. Should he have actually been able to see over it? What height is the Beast of Nature? Let me have a look. I'm going to have to pull up the Mantic app now, because I don't want to scroll back through the pictures again. Trying to see whether he should have been able to see there, because there was something in my mind that told me he shouldn't have been able to see. But I had overlooked the fact that the Needlefangs were only height 1, I think, and I think I assumed the Gur Panthers might have been height 1 as well, possibly, at that stage, which would have made the total height 4. So if the Beast of Nature is height 5, does that mean he shouldn't have been able to see over them? Maybe, are they more than half on the hill? It looks like it from here, but I'm not 100% sure. So let's have a quick look at the Beast of Nature. I'm going into the herd now on the app. I can actually find them. There we go. The herd. Quick create. And where is the Beast of Nature? There we go. Beast of Nature, height 5. Does that mean he shouldn't have been able to see past then? Because the only thing we determined was that his leader point wasn't on the hill, I think. So I thought the Soul Flayers were safe. Yeah, so maybe he shouldn't have been able to see them. If someone knows anything to contradict that, then let me know. But there we go, into the flank of the Soul Flayers, which I didn't see coming because I assumed he wouldn't be able to see them. But I think at that stage I was thinking that the Beast of Nature was only height 4 rather than 5, and that both these units were height 1. But I think the Gur Panthers seem to actually be height 2, so maybe he shouldn't have been able to see actually. And the enemy just closing in a bit, but also backing away if they don't want to be in my charge range yet. And you can see the Needlefangs get killed there, obviously. The Soul Flayers get wavered, which they can live with for now. So because of this getting into the flank now, I'm going to have to start being aggressive. We've got this little werewolf-esque dude here as well. So, my Shadowhounds kill one of the Gur Panthers and turn to face the other one. Soul Flayers just chilling. The Scarecrow Regiment moves up towards the enemy. Let's go back and have a look. Moves into this spot here. Bloodworms are, well, They move up because they had the token. The Scarecrows, they had a 2-point token. And it was dropped onto the ground, and the Bloodworms then picked it up. And then the Scarecrows moved off ahead to absorb a charge. Bart says, I'll let Jake know he's a damn dirty cheat. It will upset him for at least a year, probably, only fair. I think that's only just and right. Let's start a campaign to overturn the 9 damage done to my Soul Flayers at Clash of Kings. We're not going to let this drop. I think I spot more of my own mistakes in these games than anything else, rules-wise. And, oh, look at those lovely painted toenails on the Shadow Hulks. Definitely my favourite part of the paintwork on the Shadow Hulks is the toenails. The only part that I did, like, mega highlighting on. So, I now have a 2-point objective there. The Scarecrows have got this 2-point objective. One of my Shadow Hulks has picked up a 1-point objective, I think, here somewhere. And I'm now holding lots of the loot tokens, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. And I'm going to try and play past the token. And then just, if an enemy are going to stand off me, I'm going to throw things at them and fight them, while the units with the loot counters are just backing away. That's the plan. So let's see how that goes. So, turn 3 for the enemy. We've got the Lycan dude and the Ger Panthers into the doggos, and also the flying individual has gone into them as well, which is not terrible for me because it's tying them up on this flank that I don't care about because I've got all the objectives I need on the right. Ger Panthers into the Bloodworms. Beast of Nature and the Chariots into the Scarecrows, which I don't mind at all. And the Soul Flayers are going to get finished off by that Beast of Nature. We have got a big infantry horde into one of the Shadow Hulks, which I'm not too disappointed about. You can see some of them wouldn't actually fit because there's too many tentacles going on there. And some more Panthers are sneaking around the back of my Scarecrows, which is very sneaky. But they're totally ignoring my Dreadfiend now, who's going to have a chance to charge somebody, which is going to be fun. The enemy double won the Shadowhounds when they were on 11 damage. Woo! So Shadowhounds live and they'll get to try and kill something now, but they're not as good when they're not making a fresh charge, though. Beast of Nature finishes off the Soul Flayers and is going to start threatening my flank at some point, so I'm going to have to do something about that. Who was that died? I think it was the Portal of Despair, who was on... The only reason it was lined up with the rest of them, it was to protect me from flank charges from the very fast units. Normally I wouldn't put it in harm's way like that. And we get a nice shot of the eyeball bag again there. Look at that. Very nice. This Shadow Hulk does not die though. So we've lost the Inspiring, but it shouldn't be a big deal. I managed to waver the Ger Panthers, which is not great from the Shadowhounds. They do regenerate a lot of wounds as well. I would have liked to have survived and then turned around to face the enemy so they couldn't flank me and kill me with just one. I wanted to force them to commit everything to kill this unit. Bloodworms do not fight the Ger Panthers. They just stand there and accept. Because as soon as those Panthers die, there's a big chariot unit there that can charge into me. So if I keep them alive, even though they're nimble, going backwards, they won't be able to get out the way sufficiently because they could only go backwards 5 inches. They could go back a little bit, do a little pivot, go that way. They're not going to open up enough space for this massive cavalry horde to fit through the gap. So I'm just going to try and keep them there. And all I'm doing is delay tactics now because I've got the tokens. I just want to hold on to them. A couple of Shadow Hulks into this horde of cavalry. Decent damage. However, we have Butchers and a Shadow Hulk and a Dreadfiend into the flank of the other cavalry horde, and they die. So that is great. And my Scarecrows turn around a bit so they're not going to get flanked by Panthers. So, cleared out that big cavalry horde with a Dreadfiend to the flank. And the other one has taken good damage as well, but this flank has obviously collapsed horribly. The Beast of Nature has the opportunity to flank charge the Bloodworms, but I do not think it would be the right move, because you're not going to kill them with that few attacks that the Beast of Nature has, and then the Beast of Nature is going to get killed by the Butchers. So you're probably better off not committing that yet until you're ready to finish off the Bloodworms. Enemy turn. The Panthers circle the Scarecrows again, but I think I've got just enough space to line up so that I'm not going to get flanked again next turn, so we can just play dance around because I've got the token and they don't. We have a Beast of Nature that was able to flank this Shadow Hulk, unfortunately, because I didn't kill that horde. And everyone else is just trying to set up. I think the Panthers go back into the Bloodworms, and at this stage I would have been like ferociously backing up these Bloodworms like up to here, trying to get them out of the way, so that if the Bloodworms charge them, you could charge in the flank, and then next turn, if I don't charge them, they can move out of the way, and then you can charge in. But they've decided to stay in there for a turn. The Beast of Nature decides, I think, the right course of action, which is to just circle around and threaten everything with rear charges. Shadow Hulk takes some good damage and dies. This one is actually facing forwards, but it was too pokey with it. And the Shadow Hounds go down this turn to the flank charge of Mr. Lichen Pants there. Turn 5 for me. So you can see this situation here. This unit isn't able to get out of the flank of at least the Butchers, I think. So Butchers into the flank. The Scarecrows turn round, drop the token. The Dreadfiend goes and picks it up. Because he's a bit smaller for a start, so he can get around, get away a bit more easily. You can see that the Bloodworms have been hit in the flank by Beast of Nature at this stage. And I've tried to position units so that they can't be charged by this thing. And you will notice, though, if we go back here, that I double wand that cavalry horde with Butchers into the flank, which is going to slightly change my game plan now, because that was supposed to be dead. The Butchers were going to overrun, so the Chariots would have a choice then of charging into the Shadow Hulk, who's got a token, or the Butchers would have turned to face slightly this way, I mean, rather than overrun, because I don't think they could overrun far enough to block it, so they would have turned to face the Shadow Hulk. So whichever one of those two you charge, the other one is going to then hit you. The Bloodworms are still sitting there. They have... I think I've dropped the token now. So, I've got a sneaking suspicion the Bloodworms could be dying soon, because there's a rear charge coming in from the Beast of Nature. So I've dropped the token under their base here. The reason is, if they kill me in close combat, they can just take the token off me. Whereas, if they kill me and I'm not carrying it, they would have to successfully overrun and land on it in order to take it off me. So, that is my thinking here. The Bloodworms may die, but they're not going to let the enemy get the token, so I've dropped it right in the corner there. And yeah, this Shadow Hulk just wants to be safe from this Beast of Nature, so it doesn't get rear charged. Don't care about getting flank charged by just one. Well, I didn't care, but the fact that these guys can now charge me as well because I double wand them has slightly altered that plan. Because this Hulk was going to look at dropping this token maybe at some point, maybe passing it on to the wounded one. And I don't even know if the Beast of Nature would have bothered flank charging me, because I would have been able to do a good job on it in the counter charge and maybe let go of the token. I don't know. Maybe it would have done, but it would have had Butchers to worry about as well. But double wand, so this Shadow Hulk's now going to die, which is my healthy one. And the Bloodworms do get rear charged now. And the Chariots go into the Butchers. And you can see that the Panthers, let's see, what did they kill? I think I've lost a Shadow Hulk there. Butchers are still alive. And yeah, the Panthers finished off the Shadow Hulk that was wounded, I believe. And then this one takes 12 damage and is still alive somehow. So I wasn't expecting Panthers to finish off a Shadow Hulk. I think it was it on 12 damage? Let's have a look. Yeah, it was. So they nimble charged, hindered. Do they have Pathfinder? They probably do. So they nimble charged around there into this Shadow Hulk, which I wasn't concerned about. But maybe I should have been. And they've killed it. This one is just about hanging on. The Bloodworms are hanging on as well, which is good. And turn 6 for me. So the Dreadfiend let's go back a sec. Yeah, there he is. He charges into the Panthers. Butchers go back into the chariots. The cavalry horde got killed by the Shadow Hulk this time, finished them off, and the Butchers went into the Beast of Nature. Hindered charge though, so didn't accomplish much. And the Bloodworms struck back at the Beast of Nature, but didn't quite kill it. You can actually see the token poking out under there now, so you can see where it is, under there. So, I'm holding a 1-point objective and a 2-point objective. So I've got 3. My opponent is holding a 1 and a 1. And there's a 2 sitting on the ground. Turn 6 for the enemy. So what do they need to do? They need to steal the objective off my Shadow Hulk. Or they need to kill the Bloodworms and successfully overrun onto this token to probably win the game. Otherwise, I'm in a winning position. And you can see that they have killed my Hulk and taken that 1 point there. So I now have a 2-point objective. And the Bloodworms die, but the overrun only goes 1 inch. So the overrun does not reach the objective, and this actually happened first. So that objective was left on the ground at the end of turn 6, and then we were going to see if the Shadow Hulk died as well. And sadly, it did take enough wounds, and it did die from the Beast of Nature. And that's very sad. And there is no turn 7, so there's no chance to bounce back from that. What would I have done in turn 7? I would hope that the Butchers killed the Beast of Nature, stole the token back, and then turn round to face the enemy, and then hopefully survive 1 round. The Dreadfiend would have hopefully killed the Ger Panthers. Or I would have dropped the token here. The Dreadfiend nimble charges into the chariots with the Butchers to get me some extra kill points. Or the Dreadfiend... Do I have the space to nimble charge into the Beast of Nature? I don't think so. I don't think the distances and the angles work for that. But this obviously would have just been picked up by my opponent in turn 7. So, very sad. And really, it was double wanting the cavalry horde that was the decisive blow. Because that ended up with both my Shadow Hulks being compromised. And a sad demise for them. So it's a loss, but it was with the final dice roll of the game, which is exactly what you want in a game of Kings of War. You want it to come down to that final dice roll. Into the next round against Northern Alliance. And the next mission is Compass Points. So we've got Half-Elf Berserker Regiment, Pack Hunters with Javelins, 2 regiments of those, Icekin Hunter Regiment, Human Tribesmen Regiment and a Horde. So we've got lots of infantry here, which isn't great news for Shadow Hulks because they won't get to use their Slayer. And it's mostly low defense as well, which is bad because I've got lots of crushing strength. Then we've got some Frostclaw Riders, so we've got a flying fast cavalry regiment that also has a shooting attack, 3 regiments of Snow Foxes, which are good chaff, 2 Cavern Dwellers, which are terrifying to me. So, the Cavern Dweller and the Gore Blight for Undead, 2 of the units in the game that I find the scariest to face, because they have really good attack profiles, but they come on a small base, a small monster base. It's like a giant's attack profile, almost a giant's nerve level, and they're about a giant's points cost, but they come in a much smaller package. A smaller base means you can fit more of them in, you can fit them into smaller gaps. And scary. Life Leech 3 as well, so they heal themselves quite well, these ones. We've got an Ice Queen with Veil of Shadow, which is irrelevant against me, of course. We've got a Lord with a bit of crushing strength and various special rules. So there's lots of ways that the Northern Alliance can put Frozen on your units, which the... Let's see, which units is it? I think it's the Tundra Fighters units get vicious when they fight you when you're frozen. So things like the Berserkers and the Human Tribesmen get vicious. And there's some things that are just vicious by default, like snow foxes. What else we got? We've got a Clarion hero cavalry throwing axes with dread, which is quite scary. So, compass points. There are 4 objectives on the table. I believe these 2 are worth 1, the 2 out on the flanks. The one in front of you, in your own half, is going to be worth 2 for you, but 3 for the enemy. And the one in the opponent's half is worth 3 for you and 2 for the enemy. So it's mostly about the centre of the table. The flanks just give you a little extra bonus. So if you can protect your own and take the enemies, that is going to be the way to go. How confident am I? Well, looking at the enemy list, it's not super fast. There is wild charge, though, to worry about, so I'm going to have to be wary of that. I do have some fast units that are faster than a significant portion of this. Let's find out how it goes, though. I've got my doggos over on the flank. I've tried to find a space for them where they can make unhindered charges, and it's not easy on this table because you've got this massive field in the middle, you've got walls, you've got this piece of terrain. So I'm thinking the flank, if they stick to right on the edge, they'll be able to hit something unhindered. They've got the Dread Fiend with them out there for support. We have got the 3 Shadow Hulks for intimidation tactics going straight for the enemy compass point objective, along with the Bloodworms. So those units are going to focus on that. I've got my Portal of Despair lagging a bit behind, so that can maybe be used to try and hold on to my own objective. We've got a Scarecrow Regiment just to threaten this one and make sure the enemy sends something out there to deal with them so I don't just take it. And we've got the Butchers holding up the flank of the Shadow Hulks there, and we've got other Butchers just providing backup with the Soul Flayers ready to fly over the top of the Bloodworms into action. The Needle Fangs just ready to jump out onto the enemy to block them in, hopefully. So, Snow Foxes. Cavern Dweller, very scary. I like the icicle basing on these. Very nice snow. And let's roll. Turn 1 for me. So, I push forwards and stay out of wild charge range with most things. I'm not worried about taking a couple of charges. I've put my Dreadfiend staring down the line. Shadowhounds are staying back because they're really fast. They don't need to move up there and get shot by anything. And just being aggressive with the Shadow Hulks. Let's see what the enemy does to retaliate, because these Frost Fangs, if they want to get involved... Not Frost Fangs, Frost Claws, isn't it? So they are probably not going to want to charge head-on into my Shadow Hulks. And in fact, they move out to the left there, where they're going to be shooting at my Scarecrows, which I'm not too bothered about because it means they're not threatening the rest of my army. Various frozen effects are being shot at me, so that slows you down a bit as well as putting Vicious onto certain enemy units when they punch you. So not much of an advance from the enemy. Turn 2 for me. The Scarecrows move up to behind this wall in case they get charged. It would be hindered. And I push my Shadow Hulks up, and I've staggered them in such a way that multi-charges are only possible into certain ones, and that flank charges aren't open either. So I've got the flank of my Shadow Hulk covered from the flyers out there by the Butchers, and then this one is out of range, and this one has its flanks covered from anything that might be able to see them down here. But this is mostly slower stuff on this side. Anything that wants to try and get into the flank of a Shadow Hulk, hindered potentially, I wouldn't be too concerned about there. And the Bloodworms with the Soul Flayers waiting behind them ready to strike. Butchers still just providing backup. I'm not interested in them fighting just yet. Because of the wild charge, the chances are I wouldn't get the first hit in with them if they were on the front lines. They're just waiting for the second wave. And I've put the Dreadfiend up on a hill, out of the charge arc of the Cavern Dweller, so he could be charged by Snow Foxes, but I wouldn't really care about that. It would take out some enemy chaff. And these archers could shoot at him, but then I could charge them, which I'm fine with as well, because he's stealthy and probably won't suffer any ill effects from being shot at by them. Turn 2 for the enemy. And I think because this is such a vast video, we've actually reached the end of slideshow number 1. So let me just pop out the thumbnail there a second so I can open this again, because I think there is a limit to the length of a slideshow on Windows Photo Viewer or whatever I'm on. So let me just scroll down to where I am and pick up where I left off. This is a very long slideshow. Now, where was I? I'm sure this is very entertaining. Although you can look at the beautiful tentacles there while I'm just finding the correct image. A 1,000 pictures in here. Okay, I think I've got it. Here we go. So, turn 2 for the enemy. We have got some humans and a hero have charged into the butchers, so they're actually flying out of the traps now into combat. We've got some snow foxes positioning themselves to try and tie up shadow hulks. We've got multi-charge, triple charge, cavern dweller, and some berserkers and some other infantry into the bloodworms, which is the only way you're going to get them if you multi-charge them like this. But because the enemy have got some shooting and I don't have any, I was eager to close the distance, and I'm confident bloodworms can survive one triple charge from these units. The Dreadfiend takes 2 points of damage from shooting and is frozen, so he's a little bit slower now. But I'm glad he's not been charged, because I want to have maximum potential of where I can go. I don't want to have to rely on nimble charging and the angles that leaves me with. Because nimble charging is great, but if you have to travel beyond the end of an enemy unit to get round them, that does limit with your 90-degree turns where you can face. The Scarecrows take a bit more shooting damage there, and let's see how much damage is dished out. The Bloodworms take a load of damage, but they are not dead, so maybe I underestimated the enemy Berserkers that did tons of damage there. The Shadow Hulks take some damage as well, but not much. But even sometimes when you're throwing all your units into combat like this, it's not necessarily to kill things, it's so that the combat that you want, which is maybe this one, none of those units are going to end up getting flanked by things because you've got the whole line tied up. And you've taken the fight to the enemy, so I can't then out-position you because you've got everything locked down. So, into my turn 3. Butchers back into the human warriors there. Only do 2 damage though, which is really sad. The Shadow Hulk into one of the Cavern Dwellers, and he does 4 wounds. Also sad. Then I've got a couple of Shadow Hulks into, or one into this unit that does 6. I have my Soul Flayers who managed to charge an enemy individual over the top of the Bloodworms, which they were able to see and get into, and wave at it. I really wanted to overrun into this unit. That would have been amazing. But can you imagine overrunning into that horde in the flank with Soul Flayers? They're already on 6 wounds. I think that would have finished them off, but couldn't quite crack through that individual. Over here, the Dreadfiend goes into the archers, does 5 damage. Scarecrows go into the Cavern Dweller to lock that down. And the Shadowhounds, let me just have a look where they were, so I can tell you exactly who they murdered. So, they went into the flank of this horde. Actually, it's not a horde, it's just this regiment here. Into the flank of that regiment, Scarecrows into the Cavern Dweller, and the Bloodworms went into this unit here. So they slid down when they countercharged. The Scarecrows went into the Cavern Dweller, Shadowhounds long-range charge into the flank here. Soul Flayers into that individual at the back, and then trying to overrun there, but sadly couldn't do it. So that was the thinking behind that. The Shadowhounds are now behind enemy lines, staring at this little bundle of joy up here, these 3 units that are concentrating on the Dreadfiend right now. And I'm feeling pretty good about this setup in the middle. The Bloodworms get a couple of wounds back, but they only did 8 damage to that unit, which is really sad. because they should be averaging 10. And an infantry regiment is the kind of thing they can one-shot. With a slightly above average roll from the bloodworms, can kill something like that quite easily. So sad that they haven't. Turn 3 for the enemy. We've got various countercharges going on, and I've moved the Shadow Hulk off there because it's too pokey, so we've just put a blank base in there instead. And countercharge, countercharge, countercharge. Snow Foxes and the Portal of Despair having a bit of a slap fight because they're both not great at fighting. Dreadfiend gets double charged, really putting all the effort into killing that Dreadfiend. And damage is going to be dished out left and right. We've got the Frost Claws decide they're going to join in the charge in the Butchers to try and finish them off. Dreadfiend gets killed, Scarecrows do not get killed. Oh, by the way, this blue counter I think is representing which unit I gave Inspiring to with the Portal of Despair. So we have lost the Bloodworms, which is okay because they got an extra turn of fighting in. Soul Flayers take some damage and get double wand. It's not really a true double wand though because they've only taken 9 damage. They did get flanked by the Snow Foxes, by the way. I was hoping that wouldn't be an issue because I was hoping to kill this character, overrun, and then kill that unit and then turn to face something horrible. Shadow Hulk down. Shadow Hulk wounded. Butchers down. So, these two armies are beating each other up quite successfully. And it was looking good a moment ago, but a couple of combats where I didn't quite live up to the amount of damage I was hoping to do has now left me in a position where the enemy has more units going on around here than I do, so I'm going to struggle to kill all of them at once. And I don't think the Butchers are in a good enough position here. I think they're too stuck behind the Scarecrows, which was obviously kind of the plan, that they were behind the Scarecrows, so you can't really have it both ways, but you should really try and look for a position where you're defended by the unit in front, but you can also charge round them if you want to later. Turn 4 for me. So, the Shadowhounds charged into the flank of those Snow Foxes, because I'm just going to ignore this lot up here now. I'm just going to go for the objectives. Because there's a compass point there that the Shadowhounds can get, so I'm going to kill the Snow Foxes. These Soul Flayers are going to kill him, hopefully, then overrun. We're going to kill everything, get onto the compass point, and just hold the two important ones, leave the flanks alone, just leave all these guys out there fighting for nothing. Use the Needle Fangs on this objective here so the enemy have to come and clear them out. Send the Butchers maybe back this way. So, let's see. Snow Fox is dead. Waver the Cavern Dweller with the Scarecrows, so that's a bonus with a double 6. These were dice that were given to me by the Polish player that I played against with the Empire of Dust. I think that's their team dice. I can't remember the name of the actual team. I know that they did win the Best Team Award, and that Steve could not pronounce the name of their team during the ceremony, to much amusement by all. So, the Shadow Hulk does kill off that big horde, which is great, and then turns around to face this unit. And this Shadow Hulk does not manage to kill that Cavern Dweller, which is sad. And the Scarecrows are just dancing around, because again, they're distracting. I don't want that flying unit getting into any of my other stuff that I care about, so I'm just going to use them to defend this objective now, the Scarecrows. Just circle around, make sure I don't get flanked, and make sure anyone who's going to hit me is going to be hindered by this wall that they're sitting on. So we've actually cleared out a lot of that stuff in the middle now, and I'm feeling a bit better about that now. Sad that the Soul Flayers are getting bogged down by this one character, though. Turn 4 for the enemy. The Wavered Cavern Dweller can't do much. The enemy flyers just circle round the Scarecrows again. They're going to have to go after me eventually. We've got some more charges into the Shadow Hulk there. This unit goes into the Butchers, which I'm not too concerned about, because you can see where they were. They're here. So I turned the Shadow Hulk to face them, so that they would have to go into the front of the Shadow Hulk, which I thought would be their target, or the flank of the Scarecrows to finish them off, because the Cavern Dweller's there. So going into the Scarecrows is a safe bet. You easily kill them, because they've already taken 10 damage and you're in the flank. Going for the Shadow Hulk, I'm not sure that's in Arc actually, I think it's just the Butchers. Going for the butchers is a longer odds of actually succeeding, but the reward is obviously much higher because that's a strong unit. And if you charge in and kill the scarecrows, you just then die from the Shadow Hulk and the butchers. And in fact, your cavern dweller would be killed by something, maybe the Shadow Hounds or the Shadow Hulk, and then the butchers would probably kill them. So it's a long shot to take out the butchers in one go, but worth a try here, in the opinion of my opponent. So going for it. Over here you can see who was there still. Who was back there. It was the Needlefangs. So they just parked themselves in the way of the enemy, and now they're dead. Then here, I think, was that the Dread Fiend that was finished off there? No, it was the Soul Flayers. They lost in combat to this little dude. So the Soul Flayers are dead. Portal of Despair against Snow Foxes. Again, pillow fight. Shadow Hulk takes more damage. Not dead yet. Now it is dead after the next round of attacks. And the butchers take 10 wounds and die. Well, so that means it was an 8 twice on the nerve roll, because these scarecrows are currently inspiring. And I think it was just a roll of a 10 was made twice on the nerve check for the butchers. So that has really scuppered my plans now. Because I was thinking that I would just be able to then charge the Cavern Dweller with the Shadow Hulk, countercharge into these guys with the butchers and kill them, and then overrun with the butchers and go for this loot token, or even turn my Shadow Hulk that way and start walking towards the valuable token over there. Because look at it, it's just wide open for my hounds, and I would rather use the hounds to slow down the enemy over here and use the Shadow Hulk, who's not taken any damage, to go and sit on this. Because I think that would just be a winning position there. If the butchers are on this one, Shadow Hulk's on that one, dogs are holding something up, and scarecrows are still annoying the birds, I think that would just be a winning position. But now suddenly I have to use the Shadow Hulk to kill them, otherwise they're going to be a pain. And then the Shadow Hulk is going to have to try and claim this one. The dogs are going to have to turn around and claim this one. So we'll see if they can hold out long enough. Turn 5 for me. So Portal of Despair still fighting the Snow Foxes. Shadow Hulk does finish off the Berserkers. The Scarecrows do a bit more damage to the Cavern Dweller, but can't get lucky and kill it again. Or waver it this time. Shadow Hounds just sit on the compass point and hold on to that with their full health. And the Shadow Hulk is staring at the compass point, which is just in front of this building. So if I can hold those two, that would be enough points to win. Turn 5 for the enemy. Cavern Dweller back into the Scarecrows. The birds finally decide now is the time to make a hindered charge into the Scarecrows. And these two units now just threatening my doggos. The Scarecrows go down to the Cavern Dweller. And I think this hero joined in as well, actually. And the Portal of Despair is dead from the other Cavern Dweller. And now, suddenly, you can see why this is a dilemma. Because if I go for that compass point, I'm going to get hit by 2 Cavern Dwellers with the Shadow Hulk. So that's not very good. And I'm running out of units now. So that one Butcher unit being killed has had a massive knock-on effect to everything else now. I've had to stretch myself very thin. These Scarecrows are holding up okay for now, though. Turn 6 for me. But the Scarecrows, I think I choose not to attack back, do I? I might attack them, actually, because the Scarecrows are going to get killed anyway. Because if I don't attack, the birds will just fly away, and then this infantry unit will charge me in the flank. So I decide that I'm going to attack them. Shadow Hulk moves at the double. I have to find out that the best option here is to get flanked by 1 Cavern Dweller rather than rear charged by 1 or flanked by 2. Just get flanked by 1, the other one's now out of range, and I'm on the loot, so that this thing will have to kill me if it wants to deprive me of this compass point. The dogs get in position to hold this one outside of the charge range of that unit, so only one of the units can charge me, which won't be enough to kill them in one go. And let's see if we can hold on for turn 6. Shadow Hulk gets flank charged by Snow Foxes and 1 Cavern Dweller. but it's on full health, so we'll see if it can survive. And the birds go back into the scarecrows because this unit can't pivot past there and charge in. One unit into the doggos, and well, the birds actually decide that they're going to go backwards and let this unit get into the flank, which is the better idea, I think. The Shadow Hulk dies. The dogs do not die. So obviously the game is lost from this position because I don't have enough units left now, and it all comes back to that one unit of butchers dying. They were critical to my plan, unfortunately, because I didn't have... I'd lost a lot of units in combat, so I needed everyone I had left to accomplish something, and those guys dying meant that I didn't really have enough to do everything I wanted to do. So I was just hoping that the game would end and I would just about cling on for the win. However, there is a turn 7. The Shadowhounds do finish off the unit they were fighting. Then in the enemy turn, the Shadowhounds get charged and do not die, so picked up some extra kill points at the end there. Into the next game. And this is a long video, isn't it? Trident Realms of Nertica. And the mission is Stockpile. So we've got an Ensnarer Horde, which we really don't like, with Hammer of Measured Force, with Regeneration 4+. So I think that this is a very powerful unit in the game. You have to be able, if you don't flank it, then you're probably not going to kill it because it's got Ensnare, so you're not going to do enough damage, even against Defense 3. You might not get enough hits through, because the nerve is high enough, and then they regenerate on a 4+, so I think that makes it a good unit defensively, especially if you can put them in terrain as well. Colin says, very long but worthy video. Yes, it's over 2 hours. We've still got 2 games to go. And I was thinking about doing this last night, you know, but because the tournament didn't actually finish until, when would it? I think it was like 6 o'clock, 6 p.m. So I didn't really have time with having to eat and such, and had to do my daily exercise as well after the event. Now that I'm in full exercise beast mode, achieving peak physical fitness rather than peak wargaming fitness. 2 placoderm regiments, a horde of giggers, or geigers if you prefer, 2 Naiad Worm Rider hordes, who are quite scary and fast, with 20 attacks each, which is fairly terrifying. Regeneration 4+ as well, so there's lots of Ensnare in this army. 2 Ensnaring Tidal Swarms, 2 Nookers, which I'm also concerned about. It's a bit like the Beast of Nature, very fast and enough attacks to just about worry you. When I compare them to like the Dreadfiend, they're not too far off, they're quite similar to a Dreadfiend. The Nooker just has that one little extra bit of movement, a bit of extra speed, and one more attack. And it may not sound like much, but in this kind of unit, I think that's a big deal, because it's really a flanking unit. If it's going in the front, it's really just to hold something up. So when you're looking for a flank, what do you want? What's going to help you get to flanks? Extra speed, and then extra attacks to make you a bit punchier when you do get to them. So I think those 2 little stat boosts actually make the Nooker a very good unit. Naiad Envoy with Bastion, which is going to help some units out defensively. A Siren who can do all the spells, apparently, gets to do all of them at once, every turn, which is wild. Enthrall, Weakness, Mindfog, and Hex. So I suppose that's balanced out because they're not the most impactful spells in the game. They're not the most powerful spells. If you could do like Bane Chant and Drain Life, and what else is good? Surge, Bark Skin, all the spells that actually can have a really big impact. If you could do all of those in one go, I think that would be excessive, but I don't see an issue with maybe doing these spells. These aren't necessarily the strongest. Then Worm Rider Centurion, bit of a large cavalry killy thing. And then, why have I got such a terrible photo of this army list? Then we've got a king And that's it. Okay, so stockpile. There is a pile of 3 loot counters in the middle. We then alternate placing a pile of 2. You can see that we've decided that we want them on the same side. My opponent put one here, I put one here. And the reason I've put one there is because I've got a unit here. This scarecrow unit is my most expendable, worst unit. They are going to go and threaten that pile. They actually have no intention of getting any of the tokens unless the enemy abandon it. So hopefully the enemy will dedicate more than one unit over there. We'll see. Because what I really want are these 2 juicy piles here, because there's 5 tokens here, 2 tokens there. But because they're close together, I'm able to put butcher units here. So if the enemy for some reason decide they're going to totally ignore these and just go for these 2, the butchers are well positioned to join in the main fight, which is where all my other units are, apart from the Dreadfiend and the Shadowhounds, who are out on the flank, going to look for some flanking action against that Nooker, who has also got a similar plan in mind. But also, it might look like I'm going to send a couple of units over there. If I put the token all the way out here, I wouldn't want butchers on this end, because they'd be too far away from where I need them. But because I need the butchers here, and only having them here, they are actually in a position where I can look as if maybe they're going that way, but actually they don't care and they're coming this way. I'm going to use this piece of terrain as well, and try and kind of blockade the enemy along this line here. If I can do that, because I've got my bloodworms here, who are very durable. 2 units of butchers. I've got the soul flayers that can jump out and block something off for a turn as well. Try and blockade that area, and then get my Shadow Hulks to pick up all these tokens, and maybe this one. Bloodworms can be picking up tokens as well. You can only pick up 1 per turn with each unit, but if you can get 2 of them at the same time onto a token pile, which I'm trying to do with my Shadow Hulks here, get 2 of them to touch at the same time, so that I can pick up 2 at once. And then I can start passing them maybe to the Portal of Despair or to the Scarecrows, because you can actually score with more than 1 token, you just can't pick up 2 at the same time from the stockpile. My opponent has Tidal Swarms. Now, they are actually good for this mission because they have Ensnare, so anything that charges them might not kill them in 1 round. So, potentially there are good units to go and pick up tokens and then eat a charge and then drop the tokens, get killed, but it doesn't matter because someone else has got the token now. You don't want the enemy to be passing the tokens back when they've got Ensnare units in front. Another way they can work is that you move them beyond the token pile with Ensnare, especially in terrain, then move up another unit, pick up the token, and now the unit in front is an ensnaring, terrible unit that you can't easily kill in 1 go because it's got Ensnare. So you're now trapped and the enemy can then start moving the tokens away from you. So we don't want that to happen, so I want to get on the tokens fast. The ones that I want anyway. So there's a lot of ensnare, there's a lot of regeneration, so I don't want to leave enemy units alive to regenerate. I want to strike decisive blows into the regenerating units and look for flanks into the ensnaring units. But you may have heard at the start of the game when I was talking about Shadow Hulks, they're actually one of the giants that is better against ensnare, since they hit on 3s naturally rather than 4s. Hitting on 5s always feels really dicey, like you're barely going to get any hits. But with Shadow Hulks hitting on 3s, hitting on 4s just means you're hitting like a normal giant now. So it doesn't feel so bad when you go into an ensnaring unit with a Shadow Hulk. It still feels like you can accomplish something. Turn 1's the enemy get to go first, which is sad, and the Tidal Swarms are straight onto that loot counter, which we don't like at all. And we've got these 2 big Worm Rider hordes staring down from this hill, along with the king as well. So this is a very dangerous area to go into. And we've got the ensnaring infantry horde there in front of this blob of tokens. And Bastion is cast, which is represented by this crown and a little card, so they're going to be extra nice at living for a turn. I think that's how Bastion works. Could just look on the Mantic Companion app, couldn't I? I don't think I've ever used Bastion. I don't do a lot of spellcasting, actually, in my armies. Night Stalkers I don't. Abyssal Dwarves I often don't take spellcasters. If I'm running the fast Abyssal Dwarves, I don't. And the Hexcaster has a very specific role that you don't normally want to take other spells with. So, let's have a look at Bastion to make sure I'm remembering what it actually does correctly. Bastion, there we go, it boosts their Waver and Route stats by 1 and also gives them Rallying to a maximum of 2. Rallying plus 1, yeah. So it just makes them like a defensive Bastion. The Nooker is a threat. So I've put my Shadowhounds in a position where they can't be charged by it, and the Dreadfiend is staring that way in case the Nooker decides it wants to get into this terrain. I would get the first hit in. So I wouldn't do much, but it would be a start. And 2 units that are fairly evenly matched. The Nooker has Ensnare, the Dreadfiend has Dread. So the Nooker is slightly better. But I don't want to get into my Shadowhounds, and I also don't want it to threaten my Shadowhounds, so it's really the threat that I'm projecting with the Dreadfiend that is the bigger deal here. I want to deter the Nooker, but if it actually comes in, I would be hesitant to just throw in against it. So, you can see I've moved up my Shadow Hulks, and I've put this one staring to the left, because there's these horrible cavalry units there that are looking down. Don't want to be flanked by them. I also want to cover the Bloodworms if they decide they're going to charge into the Bloodworms. And I've also intentionally left my flank open to the Tidal Swarm because I don't want them charging me in the front, because I don't want them blocking off my Shadow Hulk. So if they want to block me now, they're going to have to move at the double, and I don't think they can really get in a position to block me very well by doing that. I've not got to any of the objectives yet, but I'm now in a position that if the enemy wants to get any of these tokens, then I can then charge them with double Shadow Hulk. The Butchers. So I've tempted this Tidal Swarm to charge into the Butcher's flank, because they'll do nothing, and that will put them here, which I believe, if I've lined it up properly, would allow the Scarecrows to flank them. It's possible that I haven't set it up correctly, but that was the intent anyway. So anything that decides it wants to attack the Butchers is also away from the objectives. So if we actually do start a fight over here, the enemy has more resources here right now than I do. So I'm not too concerned. And if the fight is going to take place here, which is what I want, so if the enemy actually charge forward now, then that's not great for me. That's why I've set up all these flanking units, because I don't want the enemy really to charge me yet. I kind of want a bit of a scrum to happen here, as I was describing earlier. So hopefully this is enough of a deterrent. I've not given any really juicy charging options here. And I've also prevented the Shadow Hulk from being blocked, which would have made it way too tempting. Because if those guys charge in, and then like this guy, for example, just moves and starts picking up tokens, by the time I've chewed through all these units and got to him, he'll be miles away with carrying tokens. So I would rather fight here than here. So hopefully all this flankage is enough of a deterrent, but we'll see if they want to throw down yet. Turn 2 for the enemy. The Tidal Swarm, upon realising that it can't block in the Shadow Hulk very well, just goes and picks up one of the loot counters, and also blocks off my potential charges there, but I'm not too disappointed about this, because I've now got the opportunity to throw my units into combat. The enemy also do not take the bait here and charge into the Butchers with anything. And this, I think this is is this the defense, high defense, like defense 6 infantry unit here? I think that's what they are. They're just hanging out. We've got the Nooker threatening down here as well, but is hesitant to go out past the Tidal Swarm, and just picks up the one of the tokens that they dropped, and then they move and pick up another one. And this unit does move in and pick up a token, I think, so I am going to be able to charge them now. However, I think this high defense unit has now opened up their flank unknowingly to a Shadow Hulk. I don't think my opponent spotted that while making the move. My Soul Flayers get hexed by a bit of spellcasting, which would limit their wind blasting ability potentially, but I'm not really interested in using that. Because I want to be charging now. I choose this turn to make my move and everything's going to be thrown in. So this proved to be enough of a deterrent that the enemy did not advance beyond this point, which is good. And now I'm ready to start charging with everything. You can see I've also got my Shadowhound's Dreadfiend there. The Nooker decides that he does not want to charge me and just decides to play the game of chess and just hides and stares this way to threaten me when I come out there. So, turn 2. This is my turn 2. So, okay, a lot's happened here. This unit is dead. They got charged by Shadowhounds and Scarecrows and a Shadow Hulk in the flank. So all those units are lined up. I've flown my Needle Fangs over the top to cover the Shadowhound's flank so it can't be charged by the Nooker. And my Dreadfiend is still hiding but now facing this way in case the Nooker wants to come out to play. The Shadow Hulk is now facing this way here towards this big horde that got charged by the other Shadow Hulk who landed on the stockpile and picked up one of the tokens as well. Portal of Despair just hanging out behind. Both units of Butchers dive in. Let me go back and show you. So these two units of Butchers, I get the double charge in on this unit here. And the only reason I was able to do this, because I don't think you actually have to make space for the unit to move into that position. I think you only have to leave space for them to fit into the frontage. So this terrain here means that if I just charge those Butchers in there, I think they would share it half and half, because there's nothing blocking any of the sliding down ability here, which would mean these guys are blocked from getting in. I think that's right. I don't think that you would slide so they could access the charge. Let me know if that's incorrect. So, what I did, I charge in with and move my units here first, get them in such a position that the only way I can fit both units in, I think, is Bart says correct. So let's see if I've done this correctly. So I threw in the Bloodworms into this combat, and let's see, what did I do with the Soul Flayers? The Soul Flayers, have they moved? I think they have. Let me go back. Because I'm trying to set up, I might have actually done this wrong. So, the Soul Flayers were about here somewhere. Okay, yeah, I think this is right. So, if the Bloodworms had gone in first, there wouldn't have been enough space to get in. Yep, I remember. So, the double charge was not viable after analysing that situation, as I just described. So, this unit of Butchers charge into this unit here. And this unit goes into this unit. So that frees up enough space for them to fit through this gap. The double charge wasn't on, because there was no way I could get a unit in at this end to prevent the slide or anything like that. So they charge into one unit each. The Bloodworms then go into this unit afterwards. If they'd gone in first, they would have slid too far and prevented both these units getting into combat. So the only way you can see how tight it is that they both fit into that gap is that the Bloodworms go in second. So they've gone into one unit each, because the double just wasn't available to me. So it has been played correctly. Good to know. And the Soul Flayers are just hanging back, and I've put Inspiring onto them with the Portal of Despair because they're not going to get killed and they're going to inspire all this lot now. So, the Scarecrows are fighting that Tidal Swarm, and you can see, because I've managed to get the fight in the position I want, there's a bit of a traffic jam now. This Butcher unit is also not being flanked by that guy. He is only in the front. And the Nooker isn't looking at them, so can't get into their flank yet. So we've got this area locked down. The tokens, the important ones, are all being contested here, which is where I have supremacy now, because I got into the flank of that unit, killed them, and I'm now looking to sweep down this flank now. So I'm feeling very good about the token situation and the positioning. Turn 3 for the enemy. So obviously this guy is able to get into the butchers there, because this tidal swarm are able to slide down when they survived, because the bloodworms didn't kill them, hilariously. The plan is obviously to kill them and then overrun and block this guy getting into the flank of the butchers. But with that ensnare, you never know how it's going to go. So they move down, and then this guy gets into the butcher's flank. But really the butchers are just doing delay tactics now. And this guy goes into this chariot, gets into the front of the butchers, and the geigers, or giggers, which is it actually supposed to be, by the way, do we know? They just turn to face the fight because they can't fit through any of these gaps at the moment because this terrain's here and we've kind of got them clogged up. This is the defense, I think this is the defense 6 infantry unit whose name I can never remember. Just move up into position there to cover the flank of the cavalry from anything that might want to go over there. And the Nooker decides it's going to charge into the flank of the Scarecrows now. And the Shadow Hulk was out of range, so it is a viable option. I still don't think I would have done it though, because I think the Nooker, it is a desperation move, and I think this flank is going so badly that the Nooker just wants to try and get lucky and maybe do something useful here. Because you've got to do something. If you just dance around, you're not contributing, and this flank's already going so badly that it's not going to do much on his own. So, if you've got any ideas for what this Nooker should be doing now, then let me know. What would you do? This flank's already collapsed. He's out there on his own. Would you throw him into something? Would you throw him into the Needle Fangs, into the flank of the Scarecrows? I think this guy was out of range though, so I don't think that was an option. I mean, I think he was out of range. I don't remember exactly whether he was. I think he was. And weakness is cast onto this Shadow Hulk. You can see when I was doing the eyeballs, this is the first Shadow Hulk that I actually put sculpted in or painted on eyeballs onto. And I hadn't got my eyeball sculpting talents down yet, so I hadn't done eyelids on these ones. These are just the existing like blobs that were already on this bit of texture that I used. On the later Shadow Hulk and the Portal of Despair, I actually started using balls of green stuff cut in half, and then a flat bit of green stuff over the top of that, which you then put a slit into and like peel them off as the eyelids. The Soul Flayers get hexed again, just in case they wanted to windblast anyone. The Scarecrows die, but the Nooker joined in, which I am very pleased about. Because now there's more units kind of stuck out here with not much to do except hold these 2 loot counters. Scarecrows take 7 damage from the Nooker, but he's obviously going to die from a rear charge from Shadowhounds, which is terrifying. The Shadow Hulk, there you can see the more impressively sculpted eyeballs there that I did. And this is the only one of my Shadow Hulks that actually has really a head. You can see it's even got eyes on its head. It may be a Kraken head, but it's still a head with eyes in it. You don't generally see the eyes because they're so recessed, and from the front the tentacles are in the way. There's not much damage going on here. Bloodworms don't take much damage from the Tidal Swarm. Butchers take 3 damage there, because I think this unit got wavered, possibly, so that's why they weren't able to join in the fight. This Butcher unit does get killed by the double charge though, but this one only takes 3 damage in the flank, so that's okay. So Operation Hold Up the Enemy and Hold On to the Tokens is still going to plan. Turn 3 for me, so you can see at the end of my turn 3, 17 minutes, because there was a lot of positioning shenanigans going on in this game. Lots of covering flanks and such. Like a game of chess. So the Nooker gets killed by the dogs, obviously. Dreadfiend and the Needle Fangs are just getting into position to affect the game somehow. The Shadow Hulks murder the unit here, the Horde, and steal the tokens, so we've got all the tokens there now. The Bloodworms kill the Tidal Swarm and take their token, so they've got both the tokens from this section now, and they're only taking 2 damage as well. And the Soul Flayers managed to get into the flank of this high defense unit, and the Shadow Hulk into the front. So the Soul Flayers decided this was their moment to strike, and we only waver the enemy, unfortunately. And the butchers, I think they hit this unit again. I think I wavered them again, possibly. So again, just holding them up, but you can see there's a lot of enemy hitting power here, but it's all against one unit that's kind of irrelevant, because I've now got the opportunity to get these bloodworms dropping tokens and leaving them behind for things like the Portal of Despair, who could then leave it behind for scarecrows or the Dread Fiend. I'm just going to try and play past the tokens. Turn 4 for the enemy, so it's a big, massive sandwich. Nooker into the flank of the bloodworms, which I'm not worried about yet, because that's going to survive. And in fact, it may actually help me, because the bloodworms aren't in a very manoeuvrable position there, because they're so vast. But if you charge them, you allow them to countercharge you, which means that they just pick up and place against you as long as there's space. They don't have to physically turn round and touch you. So that might actually be to their benefit, positioning-wise, and when they countercharge, they can drop the counters over here for someone else to pick up. So if there's a unit that's penned in like that, think about the implications of charging them. I think I'm correct in my description of this rule. Bastion is cast onto these Worm Riders there, and you can see this unit have countercharged into the Soul Flayers, because they do have Fury, I think, which is why they're able to do that. Needlefangs have something done to them. I don't know what it is. Oh, it might be weakness? Maybe? And Soul Flayers take 8 damage and die. And then they now turn around to face the Shadow Hulks. The Bloodworms, they go up to 6 damage, but they're still alive. So, feeling pretty good about it. I've got this flank nailed down, the enemy has this flank, but they're so congested. And I've got token supremacy, so I'm feeling good about it still. What am I going to do from here? I'm going to start dropping tokens and leaving them for other units, and throwing units into combat. So the Shadow Hulks fly in and clear out the units in this area, leaving tokens behind for the Scarecrows to pick up. Bloodworms drop the tokens, countercharge the Nooker. The Portal of Despair picks up the tokens, and the Bloodworms kill the Nooker. And over here you can see where those 2 tokens are on that Tidal Swarm still. So, I've got a token on the Scarecrows, 2 tokens on this undamaged Shadow Hulk, 2 tokens on the undamaged Portal of Despair, and the Bloodworms are providing a blockade there. And this hard-hitting unit physically can't get past to join in any of the action yet. And I've still got more token passing I can do. Turn 6 for the enemy. So, if it ends on turn 6, then I think I'm just going to win, because I have the tokens. So, double Worm Rider charge and the King into the Bloodworms. See how much damage they can do. We've got the... I think this is a different character there. Oh, that might be the King. That's the Chariot, whose name I can't remember. So, that one's into the Shadow Hulk. And the Gigas up onto the hill, so they can actually get involved in the game now. Shadow Hulk takes some damage. Bloodworms are killed, obliterated. So, if there is a turn 7, I'm going to have some kind of dropping of tokens shenanigans to keep them safe. My turn 6. The Portal of Despair has a plan. I actually had a couple of plans. So what I wanted to do was get the dogs through here and pick up the tokens with them, and throw the Portal of Despair into combat with something to block up. However, the dogs couldn't fit through the gap because of the terrain, so I had to rely on the Dread Fiend. With his nimble ability, he was already facing this way, was able to go boop, boop down here and pick up the token pick up the tokens that the Portal of Despair dropped behind. The portal then decided who to charge into, because these units are nimble, so you have to block them well. So the portal, realising that if I block up this unit, the gap for this unit to get through isn't big enough. There's not enough space to nimble round to hit the Dread Fiend, who would be back here. and this unit would have its view of the Dreadfiend obstructed by the Portal of Despair. So that would keep the tokens safe on him. So you can see that's how the position ends up. Dreadfiend holding tokens, Portal of Despair charging into this unit, blocking line of sight there. We had to get the laser out to make sure he couldn't see him before I decided whether it was a good idea or not. And we determined that once the laser was out, he could not be seen. The Shadow Hulk going in there, another Shadow Hulk into those guys, and we've got tokens just hiding at the back now. So this Shadow Hulk actually drops the tokens which the dogs pick up because they've not taken any damage and there's no one really that can attack them. So even if there is a turn 7, I think it's safe now. But as it stands, there is no turn 7, so the game just ends there. I hold 5 tokens to 2, and this is pretty much the end kind of position here. So it worked quite well, the plan. There were a few things that didn't quite go to plan. A couple of units that got killed when I was hoping they wouldn't. But overall, it went pretty smoothly. And it shows you that you want to be fighting on the opponent's side of the tokens, really. Because that means you've got units that are able to then pick them up, which is what happened here. I was able to get onto the loot piles, and it was right in front of the enemy's face, but they couldn't attack the bloodworms that were taking the tokens here because I'd got into combat with the units on the hill. So I think that all worked out quite nicely. This flank obviously went very well, with various flanks I was able to get into. And overall, I think this unit, they're quite a powerful unit, this crab big cavalry unit, they could have actually got into the game a bit more had they been maybe on the front lines a bit. I don't think they needed to be staggered as much as they were because I didn't have a lot of speed. The enemy had a speed advantage with a lot of their units. I've only got a couple of fast units. So I think they could have been in more of a front line level. And the tidal swarms as chaff, I think, yeah, they could have probably been a bit more aggressive, these guys here, rather than on the flank. Because there was only 2 objectives, 2 loot counters out there to fight for. So all in all, went well. And we're turning it around. 1 game to go. And my goal with this army was to try and get 3 wins. Because it wasn't chosen as an army list, as I was describing at the beginning. It was chosen entirely as a collection of models, which was then made legal by other units being added to it. So 3 wins I think would be good, and if I can win my last game, then we'll be on 3 wins. So that's the dream. And it's going to be against ogres, which as soon as I see that, I think Shadow Hulks are going to have a good time because they're going to be using their Slayer against almost everything. So let's see what we're up against, and we see immediately that it's quite a fast ogre list. So we've got 2 hordes of hunters who are speed 7. We've got Berserker Braves, 2 regiments of those, so they've got a good number of attacks considering they're just regiments. Then, because I've zoomed in, it's turned my arrow into a hand, I've noticed. 2 troops of Red Goblin Scouts, just a bit of chaff. 2 warrior chariot regiments, and 1 with the Brew of Sharpness, 1 with Blessing of the Gods, so they're going to hit hard. Boomer chariots, a bit of shooting, I'm not worried about that because I'm stealthy. The big deal, Mammoth, is quite a big deal against infantry and cavalry with that Rampage D6, that's quite scary, on top of the flat 12 attacks. So you're paying slightly more for it than you are for a giant, but it's the reliable number of attacks. Only hits on 4s, so the Shadow Hulk maybe would have a good time against this. Red Goblin Slasher with Sharp Stick Thrower on it, not worried about that at all. With the Stealthy. Sergeant on a Chariot, and a Standard Bearer with Bane Chant, which we don't like. And it is, the final mission is Control. So, I've put down these 2 markers here to show the corners of the control zones. So for anyone not familiar, the table is divided into 6 2-foot by 2-foot squares. Each one at the end of the game, whoever has the most unit strength gets a victory point, and if you hold the 1 in the middle on your opponent's side, you get 2 victory points. So you can see that we've both kind of got a similar idea. My usual thinking with Control is that to win the game, you need to have dominance over a very small area. Like if you look at where this circle is, you need to just have control of around there. And then at the end of the game, you can choose to allocate your resources to wherever you're going to get the most points. But because they're large areas, they're not just objectives, you also have to work to prevent the enemy from circling around you and getting into your territory with lots of unit strength. We both have a lot of unit strength. There are no individuals on the table. My unit strength is 31, and my opponent's is 22, so it's not as high as mine, so I've got the advantage there. So it benefits me if we're not murdering each other, because I just have higher unit strength in general, so I'll just win if nothing dies. Neither of these lists really have any healing, and they both hit reasonably hard-ish. So it's possible that we do just kill each other. You can see the enemy have got a very compact box of chariots up there, and smaller units on this side with the big deal. I've gone for a bit of a wider frontage with only the units that I really do not want to be charged or can hop over the units in front at the back. The Soul Flayers can hop over. The Shadow Hounds do not want to get charged by anything, so they're not going to go on the front lines. They're just going to go and kill something, hopefully in one go. If it's an ogre, like an ogre chariot unit or a regular horde of ogres, I don't know if the Shadow Hounds would do it in one hit, so maybe it's going to be something that's already taken damage that they'll then come in and finish off. The Dread Fiend can go out in front at some point if it needs to, and I've got the Shadow Hulks spread out in this one. I've got my unit strength from the Bloodworms. They've got a high unit strength of 5. The Scarecrows, the Butchers are high unit strength, the Shadow Hounds are decent, and the Titans are all unit strength 2. So it's just really good unit strength all across the army. So I'm feeling very good about the scenario. Enemy speed is something to be concerned about, but they're very congested and compact with a piece of terrain there. So much like in the last game, if we can get the enemies blocked off, then maybe we can deny them reaching the places they can score. So let's find out. See, both the scout units are over there, so presumably they're going to be looking to just sit in an area and just control it at the end of the game rather than joining in with the fighting. The big deal is behind them. We've got chariots and chariots. We've got the boomer chariots, which is this one with the guy with the big blunderbuss on the back. We've got the warriors, or the braves, the berserkers, and we've got the... Hold on, which ones are the berserkers now? Are they the regiments or the troops? Let's see. The berserkers are the regiments, okay. And the hunters are the hordes. There we go. So the hunters, that's what they are. Hunters are these ones, and the berserkers are the small units of ogres. So I go first and push forward. I think my opponent may have won and told me to go first. I think with control, it's generally accepted that going last in control is good, because you get the choice of where to allocate your unit strength resources at the end of the game, because you know the game is going to end. Less so when there's a turn 7. If it's a fixed game end event where there's no turn 7s, you definitely want to go last on control. But when it's turn 7, it's a bit more up in the air, because you can't guarantee the game's about to end at the end of turn 6. But generally, you want to be able to jump between sections based on where the enemy is and do some maths on your final turn to turn it in your favour. So, Dread Fiend out in front, staying out of charge range with most things, if not everything at this stage. And this little unit of Scarecrows are just there to prevent the enemy from bringing one unit of cavalry here and sitting here to just control that section. They're going to have to actually come here and kill the Scarecrows if they want to take it. And I don't know if one unit of cavalry is going to be able to do it, the little goblin cavalry. And in the middle, got Bloodworms, just massive unit strength, so I'm either going to use them to hold my own home section or push them into the enemies. And really, I just really like the positioning already. I think if we're fighting here, where it looks like there's going to be a big fight on this sort of line, that benefits me, because I'm going to be able to leave a couple of small units behind to score and then contest these areas. We've got the enemy mostly penned into a corner right now, so we'll see if they stay that way. But overall, I'm feeling good at this stage of the game. Turn 1 for the enemy. They're pushing up but keeping a solid block, so they're not going to give me any easy flanks. And a bit of shooting into the Dreadfiend takes 2 damage. The Big Deal is slightly faster than Shadow Hulk, so he's able to stay outside of my charge range. Turn 2 for me. Now, I said there were no major flanks being given up, but there is a small one, and I decide that this is worth taking with the Soul Flayers because they can see over the hill, they're taller than the hill. In they go into the flank of these Berserkers. Now, on their own that wouldn't be great, but they're also boxing in enemy units by doing this, because they charge in, kill them, and then go backwards. Or they have the choice of doing that or rotating, whatever's going to be best to block off these chariots, because I don't want to be double charged by these. Any one of my units can survive a frontal assault hindered over this wall from 1 chariot unit, maybe not 2. So the Soul Flayers are going to kill them and block this unit to cover my advance. So there you go. So I went backwards after killing them, and now this unit, we get the laser out to figure out whether it's sufficient, and they cannot create an angle with a pivot to reach this Shadow Hulk. So only 1 unit would be able to go in on its own, which would be hindered. And I've turned to make sure anyone who did charge me would be touching the wall. Butcher's there, Shadow Hulk in front here. We've got the Hounds on the hill, so potentially they could charge something if nothing comes too far forward next turn. If the Butchers get out of the way, they can see over the hill if there's no one else in front. Dreadfiend moves up to behind here to stare down the flank of the enemy, so if they don't do something about that, he's going to be able to charge something next turn with his Nimble, and I just like this position. In the middle, I am playing it a bit more conservatively. Bloodworms are not going to be too eager to get into a fight in this game, because their unit strength is so high that no one can compete with that. So if they live, I just hold the section they're in pretty much. So they're going to stay back a bit and wait for the enemy to come to me. There's no reason for me to go forward and get charged right now. Shadow Hulk is just going to back out of the Big Deal's charge range for the time being. So, it's definitely a battle on 2 fronts. This is clearly the bigger one. This one, though, has just as many implications on scoring, because this is all compact into this small table section here. This is a bit more spread out. There's going to be more space for enemy units to move around here. So this is also a very important area scoring-wise. Turn 2 for the enemy. So the red goblins spread out, so looking to surround the scarecrows. We have got some hunters into the Shadow Hulk on the hill. We've got chariots into the flank of the Soul Flayers and the slasher into the front. I really like this metallic blue slasher. For some reason, I just think that's a really cool colour scheme. I don't think I'd seen it before. Very nice. And we've got chariots going in solo, hindered over the wall into the Shadow Hulk. Now this wall, I really like the wall being here, because if I end up having to fight over it with Shadow Hulks, that's not a big deal, because I've got Strider and the enemy does not. So it's taking away a lot of what they can do at the moment. The Soul Flayers obviously knew they were going to get killed. It was a worthy sacrifice to kill a unit of Berserkers and then block up the enemy, because look how congested it is in here already. It's going to be a big issue for the enemy to break through with significant killing power in this area, I think. I've still got the Dreadfiend next turn as well, who's going to be able to dive in there to block something up or murder something. And the Shadow Hulk, who every time there's a picture from the back of the Shadow Hulk, my eye gets drawn to this eyeball and this eyeball. It's watching you always. 9 damage on the Shadow Hulk, not enough. Soul Flayers obviously get killed. 5 damage on this Shadow Hulk from the Hunters. So, I think that's fine. Acceptable losses. Turn 3. The Shadow Hulk and the Butchers murder that chariot, and I think the token on them represents them being inspired, or having inspiring from the Portal of Despair. So I think the Butchers were able to get into the flank of that chariot unit. And then a lovely upside down picture there of the Dreadfiend blocking up those chariots. And the other Butchers, if we go back here, let's go back and see. This Butcher unit was able to get into the flank of the Hunters. So we had just had double flank action there. So both those units are now dead because they were both wide open. And looking back, let's have a look at the position the Ogres found themselves in before they made that commitment. So here it is. what would you do as the ogre player here? Because if you throw them in, as we found out, they got flanked by butchers. But if you don't go in, then what do you do? Do you still hit the soul flayers and just kill them? Because the longer it drags on, you're penned in a corner in control scenario. And if you do just hit the soul flayers, you're allowing me to get the first hit on your units then. So, yeah, I don't know what really could have been done wildly different. So let me know what you would do in this situation as the ogres, because nothing's jumping out at me as being a perfect solution. Maybe throwing out, like, the standard bearer to block for a turn until something else opens up, I don't know. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. So my turn 3, killed both those units with butcher flank charges. I move the Shadow Hulk forward and block the big deal with needle fangs, because I don't mind having this fight, and I'm pretty confident that the Shadow Hulk will defeat the big deal. And I've also got the bloodworms there in case I want to charge them in, but I probably don't. I'm mostly going to look to hold them back. And you can see that we've got this Shadow Hulk who is staring at the slasher. So whoever the slasher charges into, there's going to be potential for a bit of flank action there. It depends what these units do as well and which gaps they can plug up, but I'm just not giving up flanks at the moment. Turn 3 for the enemy. We get a... oh yeah, because I rotated my scarecrows so they wouldn't get flanked by any of these goblins, and both units decided to go into the front. This one got hindered by the terrain, the other one did not. The berserkers decide they're going to be the ones to charge into the needle fangs, so the big deal is not in combat yet. The slasher goes into the Shadow Hulk, who is now a blank base because both these units are very pokey. We've got hunters into the Shadow Hulk. We have got chariots into the butchers. These butchers have been left alone for the time being. And some damage is dished out. I think these butchers maybe get shot a little bit by this chariot. Maybe. Is that even the right chariot? And 5 damage onto the needle fangs from the hunters. Shadow Hulk takes 8 damage from the slasher. Butchers are up to 7 damage in here, and the Shadow Hulk gets killed by the hunters, so we have lost something out on this side now. But in general, I still like the position because I now have a flank on the slasher if I want it with the butchers. The Shadow Hounds are still in a decent position where they can maybe get involved as well. So turn 4. The Shadow Hounds and the butchers charge into the chariots and only waver them, which is very disappointing because you can see here that unit charge gets out of the way, double charge into the front here. So it does mean that these butchers can't be flanked by the hunters now, which is good. They're going to be in the front, and we've got the double charge in there. It just didn't do quite enough and only wavered. Dreadfiend continues to fight the Boomer Chariot Regiment. The butchers in the flank managed to kill the slasher with the help of the Shadow Hulk. The Needle Fangs and the Shadow Hulk both charge into the berserkers and kill them. The Needle Fangs then overrun towards the big deal, and the Shadow Hulk goes backwards, I think. So the charge into the Shadow Hulk is now not possible. Now, if we look at... let's go back here. Because they're slightly off-centre, if the Shadow Hulk had been right in the middle of the Needle Fangs, I don't know whether this would have been possible. But the fact that the Shadow Hulk is on this side means that the Needle Fangs will slide to this side, Shadow Hulk just goes boop, touches, gets into combat. So, killed off the berserkers that were in front of the big deal, and now we've still prevented the big deal from getting the first hit into the Shadow Hulk, just with that little bit of positioning. Bloodworms are just very safe, and again that counter on them just means that they're the unit that's going to be inspiring this turn. Portal of Despair getting into position to inspire everybody as well. So I'm still liking all of the positions here. The Scarecrows counter into this unit, and managed to waver them with 1 damage, which is quite funny. Turn 4 for the enemy. The Big Deal decides to flank the Needle Fangs to eat them, and then get into a fight with the Shadow Hulk. The remaining, or non-wavered cavalry charge into the flank of the Scarecrows. They may finish them off now, possibly. And all the chariots and the hunters get stuck into combat over here with the butchers and the Shadow Hounds. The Standard Bearer is mostly just Bane chanting people, so he's not interested in fighting yet. The Scarecrows over there do get killed, and the Needle Fangs get killed by the Big Deal, so we're about to see a big Titan battle there. The Dread Fiend takes more damage from the Boomer Chariots, so they're just punching each other but not doing much. The Shadow Hounds get wavered, which is unfortunate for only 4 damage. And the Butchers die. So this flank has actually fallen a little bit now that it's opened up and the enemy units were able to get into combat. But I've still got significant positional and unit strength advantage here. So, now I'm thinking about the scenario. Because maybe, whatever I throw over here, I might not actually win this fight over on this side. So, I'm going to put the Scarecrows into this table section, because that should be enough to hold that, and the Bloodworms are going to go back into my home section. The Shadow Hulk is going to try and kill the Big Deal, and then try and get into one of these table sections, which would beat one of these two, and these two are surely just going to try and hold these 2 sections. And then if I hold these 2, that's going to be 3 points, and then 1 more of these with the Shadow Hulk would give me 4 points, which would be unbeatable. And then hopefully one of these 2 will go my way as well, because it is my turn next, so we're going to try and kill more stuff. Turn 5 for me. Well, I say I'm going to try and kill more stuff. I get a Shadow Hulk and the Dread Fiend into the Boomer Chariots, do loads of damage, get them up to 17, so they are devastated, but then double one them with the brand new Clash of Kings 2025 dice set. Well, isn't that? The Portal of Despair charges into these chariots because they were already on 12 damage, and the Shadow Hounds are wavered, so they can't join in, but I don't even do 1 wound with the Portal of Despair, which is very sad. The Shadow Hulk does 7 damage to the Big Deal in the first round, so that's started off quite well, and you can see I'm setting up my big units to score the big points. Turn 5 for the enemy. So, because those chariots lived, that means the Portal of Despair now gets flanked by the hunters, and the dogs might die this turn as well because they were wavered. The Big Deal goes back into the Shadow Hulk, and the enemy cavalry start spreading out for unit strength spreading purposes for the end of the game scoring. And the Big Deal does 4 damage to the Shadow Hulk, so I may actually kill the Big Deal next turn with a bit of luck. The Dread Fiend gets wavered by the Boomer Chariots again. Did he get wavered last time? I don't remember. I don't think so, but he may have done. And you can see here that the Portal of Despair gets killed. The Shadow Hounds get wavered again, which isn't actually that bad because it blocks up enemy units for a bit longer. And the fight was turning a bit against me here. Because I've got massive, expensive units, particularly the Bloodworms, are not involved in the fighting at all. I'm purely using them for scoring, and now maybe I'm thinking they would have been useful over here. Turn 6 for me. So the Shadow Hulk and the Scarecrows join in, and they managed to do just enough to kill the Big Deal. And now Shadow Hulk turns, so that if there's a turn 7, I'll be able to move into one of these table sections and secure one of those zones. The Dread Fiend is wavered, so the Shadow Hulk manages to finish off the chariots that were already almost dead and then turns to face the enemy there. The Butchers are able to charge into the Hunters, but don't kill them. And that's how we're stuck at the moment. So, as it stands, I have these 2 table sections, which are worth 3. My opponent has that one, which is worth 1. And these ones are pretty close. I think maybe I have this one at the moment, because the Shadow Hounds, I think, are 3. The Shadow Hulk is 2, so I think I've got 6 in there. My opponent has probably less than that. And then these 2 units are the same in this section here. So I've got the edge at the moment, but it is my opponent's turn next. So these guys actually realise they can't make it into this section yet, because they'd gone too far this way, so they need a turn 7 to get into here to score. The hunters against the butchers, they do 6 damage. The shadow hounds are taken out. So that means if the game ends, the enemy would hold this table section, but not this one. So I would win if the game ends. Is that going to be the case? No, there's turn 7. So the Shadow Hulk moves into these areas here. So I think he's mostly on this side. So he's going to be holding this section now. The Scarecrows just consolidate their position. The Dreadfiend charges, because he can just about see the chariot hero that was here, charges and kills that to get me some more points. The Shadow Hulk joins in with the butchers and kills the hunters. So the enemy don't really have enough left, I think, to threaten me winning the game now, because I've got 3 points there, 4 points. The enemy are only going to have 1 over here, and I'm probably going to have this one unless the enemy kill both these units, which is very unlikely, so it's looking good. And we've just run out of slideshow space again. This is twice I've had to refresh the slideshow because Windows Photo Viewer doesn't allow you to have a slideshow with that many pictures. Over 1,000 images, I think, in this video. So let's get the thumbnail up a second while I refresh that. Doo-dee-doo-dee-doo. We're right near the end now, though. Only a few pictures left. So let's get that fired up. And almost there. There we go. So, turn 7 for the enemy. The cavalry decide they're going to flank charge the Shadow Hulk, and I'm not concerned at all. I think he'll be fine. And the chariots go into the other Shadow Hulk. The Standard Bearer goes into the butchers, because like I said, both these units need to die for the enemy to get anything out of the game. Shadow Hulk takes a couple of wounds, and the other units take a couple of wounds and don't die. So there we go, it's another win, and a bit of a spoiler alert there. So I hold many table sections, my opponent holds not many table sections, and I win. So with that, that's 3 wins, which was the target with this Night Stalker list that, as I was saying, isn't much of a list at all. Really just a collection of cool models. And what does that earn me in the table? Bum bum bum. It earns me the exact average countercharger award. So the most average player award, dead in the middle of the rankings. A perfectly average score out of everybody. My score was completely average, straight down the middle. So I get a prize for that. So isn't that exciting? Very cool trophy. And with that and the wooden spoon are kind of fun awards when you win them, because you obviously get applause, even though you've either lost a load of games or you've somehow finished in the exact middle of the table, which isn't much of an accomplishment. There are players that are finishing like 62nd and 83rd who got no prize at all. But I got a trophy, so what do you think about that? So I was rewarded for bringing a perfectly average army. And there were flaws in my army list because, again, it wasn't really a list. If I was going to optimise this with my current model collection, what would I do? So, I think one of the Shadow Hulks has to come out. Unfortunately, because I really like them. At least one has to go. I would be half tempted to take out one of the Butcher hordes as well. I do like Butchers, but I think Shadowhounds are really good. And I think having a second regiment of Shadowhounds would be effective. It would give me more speed, it would give me 2 hard-hitting, long-range units. What else do I need? I could do with maybe the little infantry character that gives Vicious to the Bloodworms. That would be great. I could do with some chaff, because I only had the Needle Fangs, really. The Dreadfiend, as much as I like him, he actually didn't do too badly for me at this event, to be fair. I think I've pretty much got down what I can do with these kinds of units. I've used Grotesque Champions for the Abyssal Dwarves. Also, Half-Breed Champions have a similar role to the Dreadfiend. They don't do a huge amount of damage. They usually charge something to get in the way of it. or to join in with another unit in the charge. So I quite like units in that mould, especially the Dreadfiend being speed 8. He is actually one of the faster of those unit types. So I don't mind him, but I don't know if he's optimal. So what else would we put in? I didn't really have any spellcasting or ranged in this army at all. I didn't have any shooting whatsoever. And there are some decent shooting units. Ravagers, they're more expensive than Butchers, I think. But they're kind of like Ogre Boomers. They're not bad. I've got lots of individuals that I just didn't even think about bringing because they don't look as cool as some of the other models. So maybe they could come in. You can do all kinds of shenanigans with wind blasting and enthralling the enemy with Night Stalkers. They're pretty good for that kind of positioning shenanigans. Soul Flayers, I'm not sure if they work as just one. I think maybe you need two. Because without Nimble, it's hard to get them in a position where they are threatening exactly how you want them to be. I ended up using them just when my opponent made a mistake, really, to hit something in the back that wasn't properly covered. It was the only time I really got the best out of them. So I think if you have two, it's more forgiving. If you put them not right next to each other, of course, you can cover a much larger area with them. I'm not sure whether they're worth it, though, for the price. I think they're like 165 points, the Soul Flayers, and they're a bit fragile. They've got lower nerve than the dogs. So you'd be looking at, if you want the Shadow Hounds, you're going to be paying a little bit more for them, but you've got more speed. You don't fly, but you are nimble, which the Soul Flayers are not. So Bart says I run 3. That sounds pretty good. But I'm definitely arriving at the conclusion that 1 isn't really that useful. 1 unit for Soul Flayers. I think you do need more than 1. I can understand 3 being good. I did run 4 at one point when they were still speed 10, and they did well for me. So maybe I could run more of those. It's sad not bringing all the Titans, but if I want to actually win games and be more competitive against the good players with Night Stalkers, then sadly I can't bring 3 Shadow Hulks, as much as I would love to. Portal of Despair definitely stays. I think that's maybe the best thing in the whole list. Is there anything else in the game for 120 points? Defense 5-16. I can't think of anything. It's unit strength 2, it's very inspiring, it gives something else inspiring. The Portal of Despair is just ridiculously good. So, because some people would pay that cost for just a chaff unit that does nothing else, and you could use it as a chaff unit. It's just a chaff unit that's as tough as a Titan, and is also inspiring. So that's a really good unit. It's just weird that it's not stealthy. I don't think it needs to be, because it's already outrageously good, but it's just oddly inconsistent across the range. So it probably should be stealthy, and then maybe put a few more points on it. Just to make everything in the army stealthy. I think that would be easier to keep track of for the enemy. Because at the beginning of every game I have to point out everything's stealthy except for this one thing, which is an odd conversation to have. So, what's next for Kings of War? For me? Well, I don't know when the next event is. I don't think I'm signed up for one yet. I'm waiting for some to pop up on the calendar. But I did have a lot of fun playing this army. And the most fun thing, actually, is talking to people about the eyeballs and the tentacles and the conversions. That's maybe the most fun part of it. So, do I persist with the Night Stalkers and try and make a competitive list? If I'm going to do that, then let me know in the comments on this video what you would like to see me add into the list to make it competitive. I'll tell you what I have in my collection that was not at this event. So I also have another unit of Soul Flayers. I have 2 other units that could pass for Soul Flayers, and they could also pass for Fiends. I have 3 hordes of Ravagers. I have a Mind Screech, a Planar Apparition, another Dreadfiend, a Reaper Soul Drinker. I have Reapers, Phantoms. I have Butcher Flesh Ripper. Just staring over into the cabinet now. I have a second unit of Shadow Hounds. I've got all the various individuals. I've got a Void Lurker. Loads of different options. So let me know, how would you make my Night Stalker army competitive? The rule is there has to be at least one Shadow Hulk in there. Because I've spent so much time converting these things, they're going to be on the table. And if I'm going to go to more events, if the list features 1 or 2, I can live with that because I can alternate which ones go to each event to keep them fresh. So that would be okay. Also, at some point, I'll play Abyssal Dwarves again because they're always my #1 Kings of War army. Even though I didn't start playing them first, they are my favourite. Still got my Goblins that I haven't played for a long time, my Undead Halflings, and my just general Undead. I haven't played either of those for quite a while. So maybe they'll get a run out as well. If I was attending more events, I would sample more armies. But there just aren't a lot of events in Nottingham for some reason. So everybody tell Mantic that they need to run more Kings of War events. Not Kings of War Ambush. Not Firefight. None of this nonsense. Not Kings of War Champions. Just proper Kings of War. At their HQ. That would be fine by me. It's not too difficult for me to get there from here. And I think I finished 98th, by the way, in the event. I think maybe a couple of players might have dropped out, so we ended up like just below 200 players. And I think I finished 98th. And then the award, I think rather than it being dead centre of the rankings, like positioning wise, because often you have an even number of players and it would be tricky to find someone directly in the middle, because that would be like 2 of you. I think it is just the average points. Or maybe there's some kind of formula they use, but I was just the most average player anyway, so I've got a trophy. And it's proudly sitting on the shelf next to all the other awards, including such classics as Kings of War Season 2022 Masters Best Army Award, League of Rordia UK Best in Faction 2018-2019, and more. Okay, this has been a very long video, let's have a look. 3 hours, 17 minutes. And I should go and eat some food, probably. And then sleep, I imagine, because I do have to go to work tomorrow. So, don't forget to like the video and subscribe and all that good stuff, obviously. And if you want to see non-stop Wargaming Battle Report goodness in all its 3 hour long plus glory, why not pledge your entire life savings to the PayPal or Patreon links in the description as well? And leave me some comments, let me know what you would do to make this very themed Night Stalkers list competitive is the main thing I want to know. And any thoughts on any of the games, any rules that you spotted that may have been played incorrectly as well is always good to bring up, so anyone watching this can read the comments and not take away lessons that are incorrect from my narration. Colin says, don't be a dummy, give Andy your money. That's a good t-shirt slogan that we should probably get printed. May have to be more specific though to make sure they don't just give it to any old random Andy. Oh, by the way, this Clash of Kings, I felt like maybe the best organised one yet. So well done to the entire team. There were quite a lot, in fact. At least like 5 people running around organising things. So they obviously did a good job. The Mantic Companion was fine. The app was running very smoothly, mostly. There was a couple of spots in the venue where there wasn't much internet, but that's not really their fault. And it's only a couple of corners, I think. I only had to exit one of the buildings, and then the internet was back. So, very nice. Lots of players. And the weird thing about the Clash of Kings is that there's so many players there that you can't even realistically have a conversation with everyone that you already know, which is really weird, because walking around I recognise most of the peoples at times, even the players that I've maybe never even spoken to or played against. I'll have recognised them from just seeing them at another event or seeing their face on a video or on the Kings of War Fanatics group or something, but you don't even really have time to say hello to everybody. There's that many people in there, and you spend most of your time playing the games. So it's pretty wild, and it's very exciting to be at an event with that many players. I think the person that won did actually win all their games, and only one other player won all their games, but they finished like 5th, I think. which is also wild. That's just a scoring system. You have to win big. You have to rack up those victory points and kill points. And yes, I've got a trophy. Woo! All that remains to be said at this point is good night out there, whatever you are.